Mr. Mark Cummins, our Deputy Permanent Secretary, Mr. Michael Wason, Charmaine Hippolyte, Financial Controller, Denise Smith, Senior Accountant, MTW, Diane Spencer, the Senior Mechanical Engineer, Antonio Seal, the Workshop Manager, Charles Bennett Innes, Chief Technical Officer, Sandra Drakes, Chief Technical Officer, Projects, Philip Tudor, the Deputy Chief Technical Officer responsible for operations, Jason Tudor, Chief Technical Officer, Charles Hayward, Senior Technical Officer, Mark Durant, Chief Planning Officer, Emil Trotman, Director of the Building Standards, Dave Scanterbury, Project Manager, and Anderlyn Curtin, Licensing Officer. From the Barbados Water Authority, we have its General Manager, Mr. Keith Roy Halliday, Finance Director, Mr. Christopher Matt, Advisor to the BWA, Dr. John Mwanza, Charlie Paris, Project Manager, as well as Alvin Jordan, who's Project Manager. On behalf of the Transport Board, they're represented by Mr. Fabian Wharton, the Chief Executive Officer, and Ms. Linda Holder, and representing the Transport Authority, Mrs. Ruth Holder.
Sorry, Minister, this is really for the technical staff. We're
Yes.
having issues with the volume in the house.
Okay.
Try again, Honorable Minister.
Madam Chair, is that better?
Yes, that's better, yes.
Okay. I'm not sure which parts you missed, Madam Chair. I was at the point where I was presenting the list of attendees. I'm not
Yes,
sure.
we heard.
Okay, fine. Thank you very much. So that constitutes the ministry's team. With a projected cost of over $500 million in capital expenditure over the next 3 years, the Ministry of Transport, Works and Water Resources will be creating history by undertaking the most comprehensive and expansive capital works program ever seen in Barbados, beginning in this forthcoming financial year. The program was born out of the recognition that a vibrant and cohesive society cannot exist without appreciating roads, commonly taken for granted, are vital, not only keeping a society connected and functioning in all aspects of its existence, but enhance the social and economic lifeblood of its citizens and institutions. The ministry's focus on capital projects will therefore generate employment, sustain economic activity in the construction sector, and its associated impact on communities through its requirements for goods and services. Our focus will be infrastructure-driven on what is achievable, what can be delivered in the financial year. In short, our simple remit will be ongoing execution. For example, with the requests of $139.4 million, the ministry will be launching the largest investment package since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic, and we'll be looking to ensure that this investment redounds to the benefit and the ultimate benefit of all Barbadians through an improved quality of life. While the estimates represent a 26.5% increase over what was approved in this current financial year, the proposed interventions for transport, works, and water will help kickstart the Barbadian economy, particularly through drastic uplift and rejuvenation of road and infrastructure quality, connectivity, public transport journey quality, and reliability and better water services. This investment will also create numerous employment opportunities for roads, cabins, and signage and water projects. With an investment of $30.1 million, we commit to provide Barbadians with greater quality and efficiency in the provision of water services for the island. However, we won't be able to solve all of the water issues in 1 year, that is the coming financial year, which accumulated over the last years, which suffered from insufficient investment in the distribution mains, the surface mains, and certainly the reservoirs. This therefore leads the government to the bold decision to take vigorous action to correct long-standing imbalance in the infrastructural investment for providing water. In this regard, it's to be noted that the Barbados Water Authority will spend close to $26 million augmenting water supply improving the distribution mains, and plant upgrade. The request for $139.4 million is broken down as follows, Chair. Personal emoluments 33, goods and services 25 million, the recurrent transfer of 18 million, capital transfers of 30.88 million, and capital expenditure of 63.17 million. The foreign funding component of the ministry's program, which represents 33.2% of the total program, is estimated at 46.3 million, will consist of IDB 13.2 million, CAF for the Latin American Development Bank 3 million, and the Barbados Water Authority 30.1 million. Now, the specific deliverables for the coming financial year will include, like I said, a water augmentation, water mains and pipelines, greening, residential fund for water-saving devices, and water protection interventions for the Eastern Corridor, especially for the people of St. Joseph and St. John. The largest capital program to be executed in the history of the Scotland District, and indeed, I might add, Madam Chair, the history of Barbados, to minimize soil erosion and ensure the residents of St. Andrews, St. Joseph, St. John, St. Thomas, and parts of St. Peter that fall into the Scotland District benefit from significant improvement to from 30 roads and bridges. And of course, this is a job creation project as well. The CAF, the Latin American Development Bank project, the road project, will commence in the coming financial year. And over the next 3 years, we intend to spend close to $100 million in this road project. The ministry has identified several roads across communities to be milled and paved. In others, we have to reconstruct roads. Again, this is another job creation project the ministry will be undertaking. The IDB Global Roads Program will commence later this year. As you know, the project will rehabilitate 6 major highways on the island, thus creating more jobs as well. And Madam Chair, I wish to give you the assurance that the ministry's highway maintenance, residential and tenantry roads program will continue during the coming financial year. Certainly, Barbadians are already seeing the benefits of our road program, and I want to thank residents in the benefiting communities for their continued cooperation with the ministry as we accelerate our road program and address the decay and the dilapidated state of roads which were left in ruins for more than 10 years. The National Infrastructure Gaping and Strengthening Program is another job creation project we're going to undertake. The long overdue National Signage and Street Infrastructure Project will certainly improve signage across the island. And finally, we will realize this objective. And again, jobs will be created from this project. The highly appreciated 35 electric buses that grace the roadways of Barbados will be added. 40 more electric buses are due to arrive and be in service in July of this year. The institutional support for ongoing improved transportation will be established through a mass transit authority. We are going to implement a cashless fare system in the coming year. The electronic vehicle registration project will come into operation later this financial year. And we are moving to have greater online processing for customers requiring the Barbados Licensing Authority services. Key process improvements to shift the processing of weight certificates and the inspection of commercial vehicles from the exclusive responsibility of the Barbados Licensing Authority to be shared with authorized garages and car dealers. Flood mitigation, development of retention ponds to augment aquifer recharge, existing well cleaning, outsourcing, of course, of professional services for the mechanical cleaning of water courses and outfalls. Of course, the ministry will procure additional equipment in this year to replace essentially equipment that some 18 to 20 years old. And we are going to have new approaches to mobility and accessibility through sidewalks, footpaths, especially where schools are located and where the rock bluff, or what we refer to as cut rock, currently exists. That would pose a threat to life, health, and safety. Highway 1 Phase 1, that will continue to provide employment for several construction workers, and when completed, in my judgment, will be a first-class stretch of highway with sidewalks and footpaths and the provision of underground utilities. I also anticipate, Madam Chair, that we will have new investment opportunities which will be created from the improved highway. Overall, the ministry's ambitious capital program will result in economic activity designed to create jobs and to fuel the construction sector year-round. This is the first time, I might add, in the history of Barbados that a government having to manage a pandemic and spend over $100 million or more in managing the effects of the pandemic, the island's healthcare system, providing assistance to the vulnerable, helping workers in key sectors whose incomes declined dramatically, providing financial assistance for small business owners, but having to embark on the largest public sector investment program that exceeds any private sector investment package. And for the first time, I believe that the public sector is charting the recovery and economic growth for Barbados. The ministry could not have proposed to undertake such projects, of course, were it not for the foresight of the government's economic team, led by the Prime Minister, in restructuring the debt over the last 2 years to give the ministry the fiscal space to fund the proposed projects. I'm mindful of our role as a works ministry. We will work with our partners to ensure Barbados's infrastructure is upgraded and expanded. And on that note, Madam Chair, I beg to move that Head 81 stand part. Thank you.
Second. Honorable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I wish to compliment the Honorable Minister on his appointment to this cabinet position after some while, and I thank him for the presentation here in the last moments and for the presence of his team in support of the proposals in the document of estimates before us. Question, I have about 10 or 12 things I'd like to raise, but I see a number of people asking to speak, so 2 or 3 as I am permitted, and I hope, ma'am, you will bear in mind there's only one opposition voice and that you will get back to me a short order and not go the full 28 before you get back here. Madam Chair, I was looking at the strategic goals as outlined by the ministry in the document that I have, and I am going to assume that it is an omission, that nowhere in this outline of strategic goals for the ministry is there any reference to water resources development in Barbados. Speaks to transport, to works and electrical services. It speaks to transport network infrastructure. It speaks to rehabilitation of highways, territory, residential roads. It speaks to licensing authority, transport authority, flood alleviation and mitigation solutions, not any reference at all to development of water resources. Now, I know the government is embarked upon some major works in the eastern corridor of Barbados, St. John, St. Joseph, perhaps some parts of St. Andrew as well to be affected by that. But one does not want to have the view that we are not being strategic about the development of water resources and water services for the people of Barbados. I don't know that we can conceive of national development and growth and all of the rest in every aspect of that without reference to what we do about supply of water and a reliable supply of water for various purposes. So I don't want to hold a view, and I don't think that we would wish to hold a view that we are not being strategic about it, and that what is ongoing now, though it is major, is not simply a reaction to the problems in the East, albeit 3 years after the government came to office. I would like to know that there's some sense of strategic direction with reference to where we're going with water development, water supplies development in Barbados.
Madam Chair.
Go ahead.
Thank you, and let me thank the Leader of the Opposition for that question. He may not be seeing information pertaining to the strategic plan as it relates to water, but water is life. And I want to share with the opposition leader that the BW is actively pursuing goals that will rectify all of the current issues that we're having across this country. And I am intimately involved in the process. I'm intimately aware of the challenges that we're having island-wide. Yes, you mentioned the project that is happening in the eastern corner at Vineyard, but that is one of maybe several CapEx projects that we will be looking to implement in short time. There's plans in train to rectify the water situation that is currently happening in the north through desal plants. There's also plans to rectify part of the problem that is happening in the constituency of St. Joseph through the upgrade of the St. Stephen's to Lodge Hill initiative. We have several water augmentation projects that will be rolled out in short time. So you may not be seeing what you term a strategic plan coming from the BWA, but I want to assure you that the BWA is actively looking to rectify all of the issues. Are we there yet? Of course not. But the overarching goal of the BWA is to ensure that our over 100,000 customers on a daily basis can have a constant supply of water. We came into government in 2018, and we found an institution with broken wings, and we're actively looking to repair those broken wings to ensure that we have flight and at a serious altitude.
It's not my second question, ma'am. It's just for clarification because the Honourable Minister mentioned supply of desalination products. What is the cost attaching to our desalination supply water services, desalinated water supply services at this time?
Thank you for that question as well. I will ask the General Manager to assist you in relation to answering that particular question.
Thank you. Good afternoon. That question, I think, can be...
Sir, please formally introduce yourself for our records.
Apologies. Keith Roy Halliday, General Manager, Barbados Water Authority.
Thank you.
The question raised can be answered from a number of perspectives. If you're looking at the cost per liter, it averages at about $1.15, $1.18. If you're looking at the overall production cost, that would be a capital, well, that's also included in the per unit cost because the cost of the actual supply has been capitalized. The desalination plants that I think Minister Charles Griffith would have referred to as part of the solution for dealing with the challenges we've had in the north would be for 2 temporary desalination plants, one of which will cost roughly $2 million to install, and the other which will cost $4.6 million to install.
I'll settle on hearing that for now, ma'am. Second question has to do with the state-subsidized, state-sponsored public transport service. Now, I hold a view. I don't have the capacity to do the necessary studies, but I hold a view from what little bit of research I have done that we need to move away from the old model or the existing model of providing public service or transport services for the public of Barbados. We have a model in which the state subsidizes the operation of public transport vehicles to move the commuting public from point A to point B every day for several hours every day with some input from private operators. I would want the minister to give me his candid view as to why it perhaps may not be more feasible for us in the long run, lest we find ourselves, after all these electric buses and all of the rest, a few years down the road or several years down the road, back at the point at which we were not too long ago, or perhaps even are still right now. But dissuade me from the view that we need to see the state remove itself from providing public transport on a commercial basis, leaving that to private operators, with the state performing a serious and significant regulatory function, in addition to the provision of a social service element of public transport, that is perhaps the school services to the school, movement of students, etc., that the state facilitates private individuals in an effort to enfranchise them, empower them. The state facilitates private individuals in getting larger and better or more suitable vehicles for the movement to and fro of the Barbadian public, and that where private interests believes that this is not viable at certain times of day, that is, into certain regions of Barbados because of the lack of traffic available for transport, where the private operators would want to shun away because of down times or lesser peak times, or because of the region's travel, the state perhaps could perform that role by subsidizing the private operators to take up that. In other words, if a guy does not want to go to Connelltown, I'm just picking a place, if the private people don't want to go to Connelltown between 12 o'clock midday and 3:30, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, because it is not viable for them, there are not a lot of people moving, but you still need to provide a service, then the state can subsidize the private operators and perhaps still have a savings. Because if they do not do that, then the state itself has to provide that transportation, and that comes perhaps at a greater cost. The same thing applies not only with respect to regions, like I said, it applies to times of day which are not seen as peak periods. So I'm simply asking that the minister, from his learned position, his informed position, because he has several technocrats surrounding him in the ministry, dissuade me from the view that the Barbados government, the state, I should say, should move out of providing commercial transport, be a regulator, be a facilitator of capital to enable people to get bigger and better vehicles, relax duties and give concessions such that that becomes more feasible. And where there are obstacles to private interests operating, subsidize them and even save costs in that context. I hope the minister is able to follow all of that.
Thank you, Honorable Member. You've given us a lot to digest. But what I can assure you is that the government of Barbados has commenced a program looking and reviewing at the whole concept of a mass transit authority. Some of what you've proposed certainly would be key components on a public transport or mass transit authority. Now, the transport sector in Barbados is worth...
Minister, I don't know if you can speak up a bit.
Sorry, the public transport sector in Barbados is worth in excess of $200 million. And people don't stay in a business where they're not making money. The TAP program has proven to be a great enabler and contributor for the Transport Board in terms of allowing the Transport Board to increase its carrying capacity, and that is going well with the 12.5% fee that they pay to the Transport Board. Within the TAP program, operators are given incentives, including duty-free access to imported vehicles, and that is already in the plan. In respect to incentives, any incentive would have to revolve around the existing fee. Of course, with a mass transit authority, you could factor in such an incentive fee at no cost to the government. The government of Barbados continues to carry, and you're quite right, a substantial investment in public transport. The investment in electric vehicles, plus the ongoing annual subsidy. Now, the government cannot continue to carry such a load. And this is not a plan that will see persons being dislodged or being placed in a position of to be unemployed. That's certainly not the plan, not at all. But what it does do, and you're right, it would help and certainly enfranchise those workers who work in public transport, who want to stay in public transport, but incentivizing those persons who want to participate in public transport, incentivizing them in such a way that the benefits will redound to them and exclusively to them, and that they would have a right as a role player in public landowner in public transport to see the benefits of their labor, and that is going to be factoring. Now, the plan, obviously, that we have to have discussions with all the partners involved. We have to discuss it with the unions. We have to discuss it with all the private operators, and we're going to do that. And at that point, when we commence discussions, other plans will be announced. But certainly, the plan that we envisage for public transport will not realize or see any persons being displaced in terms of unemployment. It will be a wholesome plan. But at the end of the day, the plan, and I can boldly say that I was part of, and it was an idea that I had for a long time ago, will result in the government being freed up from carrying the substantial load that they currently carry. That money that we are currently using and transferring into the public transport sector could be used to help build out our infrastructure and to help pay for other social services that we need in Barbados. So I'm with you. It is something that is workable, and I can tell you, having served as a former chairman of the Transport Board, that the plan is workable. I honestly believe once we get the buy-in from the partners, that Barbadians will be very proud of any mass transit authority that we put together as a government. I hope that answers your question, sir.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Madam Chair. He did say in very clear terms, I am with you. Those are dangerous words. I really would wish that he would clarify exactly what he meant when he said, I am with you.
I know that you're being facetious, and I will take that as an internal cheat, but I'm with you on your views as it relates to public transport. Just for the record, least there be any misunderstandings.
I'm happy always to have this minister with me. Last question before I give away third question. It has to do with the Barbados Water Authority. This administration, when in opposition, was fairly condemnatory in its assessment of, and very harshly critical, and I'm not saying unjustly so, but the criticism was harsh. The words of condemnation were strong. Of the management, to use the terms I've seen, mismanagement, negligence, and the misspending at the Barbados Water Authority. $65 million spent on a building sitting on the top of Pine Hill there, and I'm not talking about Pine Hill Dairy Plant. $1.5 billion saved because this government had to go through the process of renegotiating contracts. Question is, what is now the debt level? After all of that, what is now our level of debt vis-a-vis our arrangements around the Barbados Water Authority, whether it has to do with that building or outside of that? What is the relationship with Inotech, of which we do not hear much in these days of greater quiet? So my questions have to do with the minister's and the team's assessment of the operations of the Barbados Water Authority. These state-related entities are very, very significant, have always been, but even more so in these very difficult times of scarce capital available to the government. We got issues at BADMC, we have issues down the road, we have issues up in the Pine. The question is, what is the minister's assessment with respect to the status of health of the operations around the BWA? We've now had a change in the chairmanship of the board, and speculation and rumors are rife around all of these things. But money's misspent, according to the former characterization on that building, $65 million, which could have been put into developing water resources and avoided all of the problems in the eastern corridor of Barbados. $1.5 billion in savings because of this government's capacity to renegotiate contracts. And what is the relationship now with Inotech, and what is the level of debt that the government has around arrangements out of the Barbados Water Authority?
Thank you for the question, Honorable Member. One of the things I would want to point to you is post-May 2018, the Barbados Water Authority did not go back to central government for any subvention. So this is like 3 years that we were functioning without going for a subvention. I agree with you based on what came from the Auditor General's report that if there were not, in my words, nefarious action at the BWA, that we would not be in a position that we're in now as it relates to resources. But that, as it is, we are striving to move forward. As it relates to your other questions, I will want to ask the general manager to shed some light on some of the questions that you asked. But I agree with you, 68 million, 104 billion, I think it was, would put the Barbados Water Authority in a very, very good position today. We would not have the issues that we're having in the eastern quarter, the northern side of this country as well, and also in Christchurch. But please be assured that plans are in train, like I said to you earlier, to rectify all of those particular problems. But I think the management of the BWA should be commended that in 3 years' time, or the last 3 years, so to speak, we have not gone back to central government for any type of subvention. I will ask the general manager to expand on the ionics portion of your question.
Thank you again. Keith Roy Halliday, General Manager, Barbados Water Authority. Just to add a little bit to what Minister Griffith would have said, this would indeed be the third year that Barbados Water Authority would be entering a budget where no subvention or funding requirement from the Barbados government is required, certainly in terms of its operations. On the CapEx side, that is what is being presented today through the sum of $30.1 million. But certainly where the debt capacity, or where the debt is with respect to the Barbados Water Authority, having undergone a full restructure and the removal of the significant debts with the assistance of government 18 to 2 years ago, we are now at the stage where Barbados Water Authority is actually covering all of its operational expenses and moving progressively towards a position where it would eventually be able to assist on the capital expenditure side. With respect to Intertech Services Limited and other related companies, any relationship that we have with them is now on a well-defined basis. We still have one or two relationship going with them in respect of specific issues, but all of the previous contractual arrangements were lifted off of the Barbados Water Authority, negotiated by the board, and paid through bonds by government, to the point where we are now operating without that type of commitment. The assets in question for most of those contracts are now owned fully by the Barbados Water Authority.
Madam Chair, just one point. To the Leader Opposition's point, the government of Barbados continues to fund the capital expenditure program for the Barbados Water Authority, but the government is not transferring any funds to fund the operating expenditure of the Barbados Water Authority. So I just wanted to make that clear, because when you go to the estimates and you look at sub-program 518 Barbados Water Authority, you will see there's a provision for $30.1 million. And that is basically to fund the capital expenditure programs not funded by the Barbados Water Authority. But for clarity, the government of Barbados does not transfer funds to pay the operating expenses of the Barbados Water Authority. Just thought I'll make that quiet observation for the Leader Opposition.
Honorable Member for St. James Central.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Ma'am, I have two brief questions. I want to begin by thanking the Minister and indeed his colleague, our other colleague, Minister Griffith, and indeed the members of the staff of the Ministry for their very cordial way in which they have responded from time to time to me and to my constituents as they did the work that they have been doing on Highway 1 Phase 1. Ma'am, that, that project, as the Minister alluded to, will see with it some footpaths and underground utilities being implemented, and it is something that we look forward to. Can we relax? The challenges, ma'am, obviously took place and still take place because it is an ongoing project. And it is to that I wanted to address the minister's attention. Specifically on Highway 1, obviously there has been some inconvenience because of the fact that the project in terms of duration took longer than was expected. Ease of access to people's houses and so on would have been an ongoing problem, and dust and things of that nature. But Minister, is it within your scope and remit that neighboring and pre-existing problems, for example, the road in Risk Road and the lunar surface in Jordan's Road, would be able to be addressed, as they are smack dab in the middle of the project works and have been in dire need of some attention now? I have been in this business, I reflected earlier today, for 18 years, and I came and found them in the state that they, well, obviously a better state, but a state of repair, a state of disrepair. So 18 years on, you can imagine how much worse they have both gotten. That is the first question. And the second question is with regard to water specifically. Is the Vineyard to, is it Casa Grande or Golden Ridge? I can't remember that project. Is that going to be able to bring some alleviation to the challenges which are facing folks in Bagatelle and in Redmond Village, Welches, Q-Land area? Just for ease of reference, those parts of St. Thomas see frequent water outages, especially during this time of the year, and that has been an ongoing burden for the folks up there to deal with. And I would invite you to use this as an opportunity to speak to the residents about what relief could come or is likely to be coming their way.
Thank you, Honorable Member. In respect of Highway 1, that project would have started November the 2nd. At the end of February, we would have had about 16 weeks in total time. However, I just want to tell the country that during this 16-week period, we had 2 weeks of rainfall. We had closed over the works over the Christmas, New Year period, 1 week. And then we had, obviously with the pause, we had not total month, but we only had 2 weeks. So effectively, 16 weeks to the end of February, minus 5, which we have absolutely no control over, would have left us with a project time of 11 weeks. We did have some delays with the Barbados Water Authority, which caused a bit of a slowdown, not the staff, but caused a bit of a slowdown. That matter has been addressed, and we anticipate we should be coming out of there in very, very short time. I know that you visit your constituents often, and you will see from the Frank World One roundabout going north to just beyond Backsrock that area has been paved. Very shortly, we'll be paving from Molyneux all the way through to the Sunset, Cemetery Road, Cemetery Road and beyond. We are now dealing with, because of the challenges we had in reciting some means, we are now working rather feverishly to deal with the section from Holders Hill going south to the Fitz Village area. And we are, the contractors on site, they're working around the clock. We push them. In fact, every Friday I have a meeting with the utilities team. Something was set up long before I got there as minister. We continue to have that meeting to keep us informed, and we measure progress on a weekly basis with our project management team. We've had some challenges because we've encountered significant hard rock, and because of that, we had a little bit of a setback. Now, the other thing I think Barbadians must be acutely aware of is that on that roadway we have fiber optic cable, and the contractors at some point had to move rather gingerly, because if we had disrupted the fiber optic network down there, all commerce would have been lost on the entire west coast of Barbados. So I do appreciate, and I really, I've said it before, I thank the residents. We've asked the contractors to increase the wetting of the road to minimize dust, because we know it has been a bit of a challenge. But it's about 11 weeks on 6.5 kilometers stretch. And like I said, when that road is finished, it will have a first-class highway, believe you me. And you will realize, like other Barbadians will realize, the economic potential that will stream from that particular stretch. In respect to Riss Road and surrounding areas, you'll be pleased to know that those roads are included in a CAF project, and we are going to execute and bring relief to the residents of Riss Road and the other road which eludes me at this point in time. Jordan's Road, thanks. Jordan's Road, we are going to do some works there. But we have to first get the infrastructure in. And like I said, I know you traverse the area well, so you will see the infrastructure that we put in, the manholes and so on. And the reason why we're doing this, and the reason why the government took the very bold initiative, but a very forward-looking one, was to ensure that there's no cutting across of the highway. Because when you fix the road and you have to go across and you have to disrupt the road, it costs the government more. So we took the view, and this is a decision taken long before I got there as minister, to ensure that we install water mains on both sides of the road, as well as some ducts on both sides to facilitate the provision of underground utilities. And once we get over this project, then that's the next step we're looking at. Because in a hurricane belt, as we are, a country with a hurricane belt, and touch wood, we don't have any this time around, we have to start looking at the provision of underground services. So you can advise your constituents, and if they're listening to me, I will also let them know that, yes, relief will be coming to their areas.
Honorable Member, I want to address your water concerns. I would have mentioned earlier about water augmentation, and the two initiatives that will probably speak to addressing your constituents' concerns in the areas, the St. Stephen's to Lodge Hill upgrade, and also the desal plant at Mullins. But to expand on that, I'm going to ask Dr. John Mwanza to give you some more information as it relates to the issues that your constituents are having. Dr. John?
Hello, good afternoon. My name is John Mwanza. I'm technical advisor to the BWA board. With regard to the area that the minister spoke to, the basically two elements that will help address those problems. We are looking at upgrading the pumping facility at St. Stephen's Reservoir, as well as upgrading the pumping facility at Lodge Hill. In addition to that, we are going to be putting in a new pipeline light-sized main between the same St. Stephen's and Lodge Hill. What that will do is allow us to get additional capacity to transfer water from the Spring Garden desal plant through St. Stephen's, through Lodge Hill, up towards Highway 2A into the Shop Hill system. Additionally, this packaged desal plant that we're looking to put at Mullins, just below Hammond's plantation, that will provide us with an additional 500,000 gallons of water that will send up to Highway 2A. And Highway 2A is essentially the main route through water is transferred to the Shop Hill, Redmonds, Qland area. So we expect to see substantial relief in that area before the end of the year. I am sure, Minister, you would have noticed some improvement with the work that was done at the trains pumping station next to St. James Secondary School, which has been bringing additional water to the same Highway 2A and transferring some of that same water up towards the Castle Grant system through Lancaster and Hepsill pumping stations.
Thank you very much, ma'am. And yes, Dr. John, I did have it drawn to my attention that there was this noticeable improvement in parts of the constituency that is traditionally affected, but the areas that I had addressed, namely Qland and Redmond Village and Welch's area are still the subject of some concern. But I thank you for the update, ministers and members of your team, and I am obliged to you, ma'am.
Thank you. Honourable Member for St. Andrew.
Mr. Minister, first, I would like to congratulate you on your appointment. It is fairly obvious to me that there are certain matters of which you would not be familiar in such a short space of time. And my first question to you, I mean, the situation of the roads in St. Andrew are so bad that it would probably take me a whole day in order to quiz you with respect to the plans for St. Andrew. In looking at these estimates, there's nothing to console me, because the many bridges in St. Andrew that need repair and restructuring, the many roads that have been left in a state of disrepair during the period of the Democratic Labour Party are in such a state that it does not make any sense for me to itemize them. But I have one question to ask you, Mr. Minister. Before I proceed, I would just want you, I want to be as brief as possible. I don't know how brief I can be. But I want to ask you a question, and the reason why I ask you this question, and it pertains to White Hill. White Hill is an area that the Barbados Labour Party flagged in the period leading up to the last election. We as a party visited that area 19 times before the last election, between November 2014, when we had a major slippage, and the actual election. And we gave a solid commitment to the people in White Hill, the people of St. Andrew, that it will be the first order of business. The Prime Minister accompanied us, I think on about 6 of those occasions, the Prime Minister accompanied us, and the people in St. Andrew and White Hill were indeed very glad to have the support of the Minister of Finance with respect to this undertaking. Now, obviously, the state with which the last administration left the economy, and also the problems faced in the tourist belt with respect to the South Coast sewage problems, obviously impacted on the ability of this Barbados Labour Party government to address the problems of White Hill at that particular point in time. But we are 3 years moving into this administration. I'm hearing about a Chinese loan. As I said, I know that these debates are a little new format and that you are new, so I'm not really castigating you in any respect. As a matter of fact, I was thinking of having a lengthy consultation with you before the estimate, so that you would have some idea as to where I'm coming from. But I don't want to say that nothing happened under the last minister, because of the fact that the other problems impacted on his ability to do anything. But before I go into White Hill, have you visited White Hill at any point in time since you were appointed minister?
Yes, I was in the area. I think it was October, November last year.
When you said you were in the area, I don't know if you were in the area. You probably might be visiting a girlfriend or something like that.
No, sir. No, sir. I was there. I went through the area with my officials. We were on a tour, and we went through the area. We were at the same time looking at the issue regarding land slippage in the area. We took the opportunity to go through, drive through the area.
What are the plans for the ministry with respect to White Hill in this year 2020-21, this year of implementation. What are the plans the ministry has for this, the people of White Hill? The people of White Hill are listening to you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. And I know that you're very passionate about representation, and I agree with you. I thank you, and whenever you have the opportunity, I'll be happy to engage with you. I know that you have a lot of knowledge, especially in the area, and also having served as a former Minister of Public Works. Just to let you know, like I indicated earlier during my speech, the government of Barbados, obviously when we came to office, and you were quite right, we had to renegotiate our debt profile. That was done, which then allowed the administration to have more fiscal space. As a result of that, the government of Barbados has entered into discussions and negotiations with compliant and exempt bank to conclude a loan, a specific loan, in the amount of $230 million. And that loan, like I said, I believe is the largest investment for road and bridge infrastructure in the Scotland district. We are finalizing that loan right now. We should be, I don't want to obviously give you a firm commitment, because when you're negotiating, I don't want to tell you that we're going to start in April and then it doesn't start in April. But what we're doing is that we're working towards that start date, a very early start date, to ensure that we fix the roads and bridges. I must also tell you that the Prime Minister has always been engaging in the ministry and assisting us, and she's made it very clear that White Hill will be the first road that we have to undertake once we conclude all of our negotiations. I would also like to tell you, Honourable George Payne, and the people of St. Andrew, that we have identified a number of roads in St. Andrew. For example, we are going to be going from Springvale to Friendship, and Baxter's to Breakaway, and Hillaby, Haggett's. We're going down to Greenland, the Belpain Road. We're going into Swans. We're going to Greg Farm, Moores Bottom area, from the Moores Bottom Junction as well. So we have identified a number of roads within the catchment and bridges that we have to address, and I give you my word that as soon as we finalize that work will commence. What I will also do is to ask Mr. Philip Tudor, who's the Deputy Chief Technical Officer responsible for operations, if you don't mind, to just give us a quick overview, because there's some other works that we've commenced in that area in respect of geotesting and so on.
No, Mr. Minister,
Okay.
before you go to Mr. Tudor, I just asked you a question and you gave me the answer, because you said that you went to White Hill. There are certain things that I want you to be aware of. And you're talking about a $30 million loan from the Chinese government. I heard that a long time ago.
No, sorry, it's a $230 million.
$230 million loan, and this is for the Scotland district. But we are talking about, I wouldn't even say that it is a temporary relief. You know, we've had extensive discussions. As a matter of fact, if it is one thing that I would applaud the former minister for, he was very quick to go to White Hill. And we had practically agreed with respect to certain things that had to be done almost immediately with respect to White Hill. And those things would have redound to the benefit of the people in White Hill, in that, you know, when you go, and you said you went to White Hill, but you realize that there's no access from one end of White Hill to the other end unless you actually go through the gully. And especially during periods of heavy rainfall, you know, the people are in a perilous state. And what we had agreed at the time, that there would be a reduction in the elevation of the hill east of Mr. Ward's residence, taking into consideration its geological characteristic, to possibly the level of the existing road, and then the material could have been used as fill to the north side and compacted every 12 inches. The road would be cut approximately 6 feet deep to reconnect the western end to the eastern end. There would then be an installation of a predominantly gabion retaining structure the full length of the road, complete with retaining walls, and the installation of utilities in sleeves to avoid excavation. Then the fill would be done The road will be compact and paved. Trees and fibrous roots will be planted on the northern side to protect topsoil. As a result of the above work, it would even have been possible to have a drive-through straight from Whitehill to Mount Hillaby. And this would have absolutely nothing to do this. Well, in the eyes of the technocrats in the ministry, this would only be a temporary solution, but it would certainly allow the people of Whitehill to move from one end of Whitehill to the Hillaby area. We have a situation now, if there's a serious problem to the bottom of Whitehill, those people in Whitehill would be marooned. I mean, and this is a situation that we've been dealing with for a long time. And the former minister had planned to look at this particular arrangement. And we thought that everything was in place. And then at the last minute, we are hearing now about consultations with an engineer who, I would like to say that he has spent his time, but an 86-year-old engineer who has strong family connections, who has to take further consultations from other geologists in Tobago and this other place before certain things can be done. And nothing is being done with respect to Whitehill. And this solution that we had we spoke about, having discussed it at length with the minister, and having had discussions on the site with C.O. Williams, would have cost in the region of about $3 million. And the work that is being proposed now, with respect to the Chinese loan, could have come at some later stage. And the thing about this particular arrangement, there were two gentlemen in the area, one in the 90s and one in the 80s, who had indicated that the area, the top of the hill where we would have leveled, that was the road when he grew up as a boy, and the road which had been damaged was only damaged. One, it was utilized. It was not the normal road, but because of the fact that it performed easy access to the bottom of the hill, that people started using that road, and then that road was paved. And in addition to that, there was a problem with a burst main. That burst main was over 20 years. And the leveling of the hill in the circumstances as proposed, at the particular point in time when we visited, would have at least formed a temporary solution to the problem. It pains me. I don't know if it is that and this is why I said that I would have preferred to make this intervention before you speak to the officers in the ministry, because I don't know if the officers in the ministry have actually resisted this proposal. But if we had gone straight away, immediately after taking office, and we had made this temporary arrangement, the people of Whitehill would be happy today. You wouldn't have a situation where there's a fear of being marooned. And at the same time, the question of then having this road connected to the Mount Hillaby, would have been a reality. I just thought I would mention that for the benefit of the new minister. I am prepared to send him the proposals which were made at the particular point in time. I'm prepared to go with him, with the officials and the engineers. I don't want to call the name of the engineers. It was not really, I'm not saying that the ministry was not right in seeking professional advice in this particular matter. But as a temporary measure, which would have been part of the permanent arrangement, the people of Whitehill would be happy today. And those people are living in dilapidated, horrible conditions, and they've been doing so for the past 3 years.
Minister?
Thank you, Minister. Honorable member. Of course, we'll be happy to join you on a tour. And I'll try and facilitate that probably as early, well, certainly within 2 weeks' time, if not next week. We will definitely arrange that tour for you to share your views with us in respect of your perspective. What I would like to do now, though, is to ask the Permanent Secretary in Ministry, and then followed by Mr. Tudor, to just give us some updated information in respect of the matters at Whitehill.
Good afternoon. My name is Mark Cummins, Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Transport, Works and Water Resources. And I visited the site with the honorable member, and he is correct. We did traverse some fairly steep terrain, and we had the benefit of the institutional knowledge of those persons who had lived in the area. We also had the benefit of the knowledge of one of our former members of staff who would have spent a significant time working in the Scotland District area. And as we all know, the Scotland District area is a very difficult area because of the soil types and its susceptibility to land slippage and soil erosion. That being said, the ministry did have a geotechnical study done by a recognized and qualified geotechnical engineer. That report was submitted to the cabinet, and we were advised that we should have a peer review of that geotechnical. That was done, and basically it's a situation where there were different engineering views. I will not even attempt to get close to that. Mr. Trudeau will speak to that in as it relates to the technical aspects. But we made provision again for other boreholes to be drilled on that. I think that would be the western side to which the honorable member spoke, because there was some difference in the engineering opinions related to that. But what I can say to the honorable member, I don't know how it will be accepted, but certainly the compliant, the loan from the Exim Bank, which is going to be executed by compliant, the contractor. The Whitehill is foremost on the list. The honorable member also made reference to the bridges in St. Andrew. I can assure him that we have completed designs and we have construction drawings for 4 bridges in St. Andrew, which are in a very advanced state of repair. And as soon as the works commence, I would certainly expect to see some work commencing on those bridges not only within this financial year, but most certainly within this calendar year. And with your permission, Madam Chair, I would like to ask Mr. Philip Tudor, our Deputy Chief Technical Officer, to speak to the technical, especially the geotechnical engineering aspects of Whitehill.
Thanks.
Good afternoon. My name is Philip Tudor. I'm Deputy Chief Technical Officer, Operations Section, Ministry of Transport, Works and Water Resources. Initially, as PS alluded, there was a peer review, and based on that peer review, there were differing opinions of the 2 or 3 engineers who had given a review of the area. This is primarily because there were no borehole tests done specifically for Whitehill. There was a solution that was brought forward whereby we would go along the brow of the hill from the Hillaby side down to the other side, I think that's Baxter's. And there was a plan to remove that hill more or less, lower the whole section. We're talking about removing about 60 to 70 feet of hill. That would have cost the ministry or cost the government in excess of $20 million. And as the minister indicated, that would probably have been only a temporary solution. We don't think that it would be good money well spent, spending $20 million or $30 million on a temporary solution. About 2 weeks ago, we went with another consultant, geotechnical consultant, Mr. Sidney Robertson from AEC Group. And we determined where boreholes would have been put along that corridor. The boreholes would more or less tell us what the soil type is later on there and what sort of road or what sort of solution would best fit that area. So the boreholes are supposed to be done within another 2 to 3 weeks. After that testing has been done, that would inform us as to where the road should be placed and what sort of structure should be put there. We're initially looking at having a section of piles from one side of Hillaby to the other side across the where the slip has taken place. As estimate, we anticipate that that project will cost no more than between $6 to $7 million, which is substantially different between that and the $20 million which had previously been stated. And that will be a more permanent solution than the temporary solution which was first advanced. So, as I said before, in another 2 to 3 weeks, hopefully once the drill rig, that's another thing, the drill rig is currently in Grenada, and with the lockdown in the various islands, we had difficulty bringing that rig from Grenada to Barbados, and that was the delay why the equipment has not been here as yet. But hopefully with another 2 to 3 weeks, the rig will be here, borehole testing will be done, results will be supplied, and the ministry will be in a better position to determine the final solution for White Hill as it relates to the reconstruction of the road, where the road will go and the sort of design that will be needed to make sure the road is a permanent structure. I do want to add to that, White Hill is prone very much so to land slippage. Within my time, 30 plus years at the ministry, I have repaired 4 to 5 sections along that same White Hill Road. So you can fix one part of White Hill, and just beyond it, another part of White Hill collapses. That is the nature of the soil in White Hill. So although we might fix the section that's collapsed now, there's no guarantee that a section further beyond will not collapse. So that is the kind of area that we're dealing with. So with that, I return back to you.
My question is, if I may interject here, what's the population like for White Hill? How many houses?
I'm not sure. I think some people have moved. I wouldn't be in a position to
It's
tell
over
you.
200 houses.
Over 200, okay. If I may come in here too, since we're on the matter of roads and repairs, I know I went through with members of staff, including the minister, both ministers, when the other gentleman was there. We toured St. Philip North, but it's a little difficult to explain to the residents of St. Philip North exactly the logistics of
If I may indulge you, though, I don't know if we finished with White Hill.
You have a final comment then I will continue.
No, I want to know from the technocrat who just spoke, because sometimes you have technocrats in ministries, especially in areas where the professionalism of engineers are concerned, without actually taking into consideration local knowledge, where their opinions are more a hindrance than anything else to the development of the particular area. And local knowledge is not actually taken into consideration. I would want to hear from the technical officer who just spoke, because I mean, one thing that scares me is that he has said that I mean, after all of this time, they are awaiting equipment to test the boreholes, which would tend to suggest that when those boreholes are actually completed, and let's say the boreholes are completed at the end of the year, and the recommendation is that it would not be feasible to have the type of road that they want to build. Are you suggesting, what suggestion would you make then with respect to the residents of White Hill? Because the proposal, the original proposal, had nothing to do with any boreholes, and as I said, you were dealing with, we had interviews with persons who were in their 90s and who were in their 80s, who are very familiar with the road never slipped. As I said, according to them, there was a burst pipe from the Barbados Water Authority. The pipe was burst for over 20 years. The road sunk as a result of this. And if you have to lower the road by 6 feet, I'm hearing this talk all the time about $20 million that you have to spend. These figures are only bandied about in order to reinforce the objection of the officers within the ministry. And I have to say that, from supporting the solution which we had agreed. I mean, when we visited this road immediately after the election, I mean, it was a fait accompli that at least we would have actually gone ahead. The Williams engineering team, they were there. And out of the blue, we're hearing now about all of these tests that have to be done. You know, I want to hear from the officers within the ministry. I don't know, as I said, the minister is relatively new. What would he recommend to the people of Rock Hall at this particular point in time? Because, I mean, it's going to take about $200 million to recite all of those people at White Hill. And then the thing about it is that this road is an important link from Hillaby to the rest of St. Andrew. And you have the same situation that we faced with respect to White Hill, we faced years ago with respect to Springvale. I mean, and the officers from the Soil Conservation Commission, without having to call in all of these international experts, they were able, by the use of gabions throughout, and we're talking about in the 90s, and that road at Springvale has held firm up to this day. You know, and it seems to me as though there's a reluctance by the officers in the NTW, and I must say this, because this is a matter that has been going on now for some time, to actually seek the views of whether it is soil conservation, and ministries are not working, departments are not working hand in hand. And with the cooperation of the officers of the soil conservation, I believe there's a matter that could be solved internally. I'm not saying that we would not do with some assistance with respect to the Chinese loan. But if I had my way, after we won the election, that road would have been completed long time, together with the link, as I said, with Mount Willoughby.
Okay.
But I'm saying that I believe that I must say that I believe that the ministers, that the technocrats in the ministry, I'm not a reflection on the technocrat who just spoke. They are resisting for whatever reasons. They might have good reasons. And I believe that this is something that we should actually, at least, it only costs us about $3 million to level the road.
Okay, let's give them a chance to respond.
The representative alluded to Springvale Road. Springvale Road was one of the first roads that I did when I came to the ministry. Springvale Road used to suffer a number of slips. Every time you fix it, it's sliding. And as the representative alluded to, I spoke with a gentleman down there. I can't remember, he's long died by now, but he brought up some photos and showed me how Springvale was, and how he gave us some ideas as to how Springvale could be redone. And we did Springvale the same way he suggested that it be done. And Springvale is the same way it is now as it was when we fixed it 20 odd years ago. Now, I also want to say that I have been engineer responsible for fixing the roads in the Scotland district over the last 30 years. So if I tell you a road is going to cost $20 million, it will cost $20 million, right? I mean, that's the way that is my profession. That is what I know. I'm not asking anybody how much it's going to cost. I know, based on the work that I've done over the past 20 or 30 years, what a road in the Scotland district will take to be repaired, right? Now, as I said before, borehole tests have to be done. It is like
it's been top in mud. As an engineer, I need to know what is under there, what I'm working with, so that I would avoid the same pitfalls that happened in the past with land slippage. We can only determine what to do on Springvale Road if we do the boreholes, and it tells us what soil is there so we can plan or we can design the road accordingly. That is the way we operate. I don't operate on guesswork, and I don't believe that any engineer should operate on guesswork, right? So with all due respect, it is my profession. I know what I'm doing, and I believe that this is the way to go with the boreholes. Once the borehole, and the borehole is not going to take to the end of the year to do. The boreholes is a matter of weeks. Once we get the results, we will know how to do the design from there, and the design will be based on engineering applications, not on guesswork. That's
But
all
you're
I
also saying that there are different reviews with respect to the peer reviews. And
There-
the peer reviews, the persons who did the peer reviews, or at least there are one or two other persons who did the peer reviews, that are not in agreement with what you are saying now.
Honorable member, I think it is time that we respect the gentleman's profession. You are not an engineer, and he is. I would like to move on from that topic. Till I get back to my point, I invite the honorable member for St. Michael South Central.
Madam Chair, thank you. I have three related questions, which, if you allow me, I will ask one at a time and give the minister and his team the opportunity to respond. First, I also have to congratulate the minister and the ministers and the ministry for coming in and covering a lot of ground with respect to the expanded capital works program that is under execution and that is also planned. I know that a big part of that from the perspective of my ministry that we were pushing also related to the questions that the last member raised in terms of the sustainability of works in the Scotland district, and to make sure that once fixes are made, that they can be sustainable. And I know that you've spent a lot of time trying to come up with those kinds of fixes. And I trust that you will be able to bring resolution to the honourable member for St. Andrew in short order. I believe that you will be able to. Let me come quickly to the questions that I have, which are not so much about what is in the estimates, but about what is not in the estimates. Understanding that you can only reflect in estimates sums of money that are agreed, sums of money that are the subject of a signed loan agreement or a loan agreement or a grant agreement that is past the stage of negotiation. So I say that to say that as the ministry that's responsible for coordinating the public sector investment program, I am aware that there are also sums of money that we expect, subject to a successful negotiation, that will be made available under what we refer to as CAF, which is the Latin American Development Bank program, that we call a SWAP. That's the nature of the project, a sector-wide approach program. And I know that there are negotiations that our ministries are engaged in on that program. The question I have about that, my first question, is that I believe that the reason we went with a sector-wide approach program was because it allows you as the ministry flexibility to do the kinds of things in the sector, which is the road network, the broader transport sector that need to be done. And a part of that, I believe, has to do with things like culverts and sidewalks and general accessibility in major town centers. That is my question. What are the plans in that SWAP program, in that sector-wide approach program that is, I believe, currently $50 million US, $100 million under negotiation? that will address the question of accessibility in town centers. And when I say accessibility, I hope you get my meaning through you, Chair, to the Minister. We have an issue with people living with disabilities in the country, in the region, because they also travel. That seems to be something that we miss. It is very difficult right now in Barbados, not just to have mobility in a wheelchair or other kind of mobility assistance device, but even to walk. Even to walk, it is difficult because we have issues with continuous sidewalks, with making sure that the areas are safe. I thank the Honourable Minister for doing the recent work at Cummins Road in Britons Hill, but we still have safety issues in respect of that junction and making sure that the area is safe. I had to be able to put that in, Chair, to my question to make sure that it is not lost on the Minister. I want to know, please, what is the plan under the SWAP program to improve accessibility for people with disabilities and for Bajans who want to walk? Because we have a problem with chronic NCDs and we need to move. Please.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Yes, there is a plan for mobility and accessibility, and we are moving in that direction. We have completed some sidewalks in Barbados, just for the benefit of the record. We had the Kendall Hill footpath that we're still working on. There's also the St. David's footpath. We're moving very shortly to St. Mark's, especially in those areas where, like I said earlier, where we have schools, primary schools. We are moving with alacrity to ensure we have that level of mobility and accessibility. What I would like to do at this time is to ask our Chief Planning Officer within the Ministry, Mr. Mark Durant, to also weigh in on this issue. Mr. Durant.
And thank you, Minister. And thank you, Minister Cadell. We share your concern about our mobility profile in Barbados.
Sir, please introduce yourself.
Sorry, Mark Durant, Chief Planning Officer, Ministry of Transport and Works
and
Water Resources. Right, so as we were saying, Minister, we share your concern about Barbados's mobility profile. We Bajans, we love cars. Our system is designed for cars. You look at our developments, you look at our streets, very little pavements. And as the Minister said, he didn't go into it as much, but we are looking at that as a concern because we realize that when people walk less, when people drive more, it adds to their physical morbidity. We have a situation in Barbados which extends 7 out of 10 of us die from the lack of physical activity. So with that in mind, that's one pillar. The second pillar I should mention is that when we drive, we emit all of these emissions in the air. It hurts our environment, it hurts our lungs. We recognize as a ministry that our mobility profile must change, and this is underscored by what is said in the physical development plan as to increasing, making more interventions that make accessibility and mobility easier. It's not only for people with disabilities, but people who drive cars. We need to have a public transport system that can take cars out of the system. We've seen in COVID is a proximity and a mobility disease. So, hence the relationship between mobility and health. So we understand your concern, Minister. We are moving swiftly to not only deal with mobility, but to deal with accessibility and create a microeconomic mobile Barbados. We remember the small shop, the bread shop. People walk to the bread shop. They go to the guy that picked the Akis this season. This is the kind of sustainability that a transport-oriented development package can bring. So I hope that our recognition of the importance of it. And the last thing I would say, I took a wicket in the fifth ball at the university. Ryan Holford's wicket. Ryan is a good batsman. The guy that taught me how to take a fifth over wicket was a guy called Ezra Mosley. And it's sad that he's no longer able to pass on the secret of taking that wicket at the fifth ball, because he was riding the bicycle and he suffered the consequence of being killed by a car. Now, in Barbados, we have a situation which extends that people who are less likely to own a car are most likely to suffer fatality from them. That is unsustainable. So, reason being why the ministry is taking fresh guard. And this fresh guard goes beyond the Ministry of Transport. We have some fantastic people in the Ministry of Health, doing some very serious work on the ground relating to hypertension, diabetes, the NCDs. But I think the scope and the vision that we had in the past, they didn't include the Ministry of Transport. And it is understandable. We don't see transport as actually adding to your health and adding to the economic benefits. But the Chief Medical Officer will tell you in his work in 2016 that because of the lack of physical inactivity, the cost of the government, the health costs and the economic cost of running a health program is significant. So we hear you, Minister. We're on the ball with it. Going forward, it's going to call for greater synergy with the Ministries of Health, with the Ministries of Education, to bring a proper transport intervention, a proper transport-oriented development to the country.
So what are your plans as the Minister asked, sir?
Right, so the key thing about making an intervention, anytime you want to spend money, anybody give you an allowance, you have to know what is it you're doing it for. You have to have an understanding of the environment. And it is sad that we missed a census year to really get an understanding of who owned cars, how they were moving, what's the appetite for driving, whether or not there was the social demographic information. We are Ministry of Transport, so we are not directly involved in understanding the beneficiary like that.
So there are plans for sidewalks, which there's serious paucity of, especially in the country where people do a lot of exercise.
Yeah.
Plans for sidewalks, plans for ramps that the disabled could get on the sidewalks. I think this is what we are trying to get at.
Okay. But there's a broader concern about driving totally. We have to bring our mobility profile down. Our mobility profile is in the region of London and these places where the air is killing their people. So we need to look seriously at getting every Barbadian to see how we can substitute a trip.
Mr. Durant, I want to thank you. I hope that in some follow-up, at some follow-up opportunity, because our ministries convene often, that I can hear from the ministry which town centers we are targeting through the CAF sector-wide approach program, which sidewalks, which areas where we think we can increase accessibility for people living with disabilities, and those specifics. I hope I can get that at some point. So I'll move on, Chair, if I can, to the second question, which is related to the same program. Some time ago, the Ministry of Investment developed a tourism investment program that focused on Bridgetown and the greater Bridgetown area. As part of that, we talked about a pedestrianization of Bridgetown, acknowledging that in order for us to see the true regeneration and rejuvenation of Bridgetown, that it is likely that pedestrianization of Bridgetown or some part of Bridgetown would be necessary. No, you can't achieve pedestrianization of Bridgetown and the enhancement of the city and the build-out of investment in the city, including residential, unless you also have a system of park and ride and overall traffic management for the greater Bridgetown area. It is my understanding that through this SWAP program, this is also something that the ministry intends to do, and I'd like to hear the implementation timeline that we believe that we'll have, and what are the general plans for making sure that that is something that, that we can have so that our plans for tourism investment, residential investment, Barbadians investing in Bridgetown can come to fruition.
Thank you, Minister. We have identified a number of plans. We would have prepared a paper submitted at Cabinet on the pedestrianization of Bridgetown. As agreed, we have now sent that paper out for comment from multiple ministries. When we get back the responses, then we'll be in a better position to concretize the plans for the city. In respect of the park and ride, the Transport Board in this financial year will be introducing the concept of a shuttle service in the Bridgetown area. We have identified the Gaba Lodge car park as an area and an opportunity for persons coming into Bridgetown to park their vehicles and utilize an electric shuttle. Open air, I might add, similar type to what we refer to as the jeepney bus, to take them through Bridgetown. Again, obviously that is to reduce the traffic inflows into the Bridgetown area. Beyond Bridgetown, we are also going to concentrate on the south coast. We're going to look, then we'll go down to Spikestown. And of course, we have current Warren's city, Warren's shuttle bus in operation. But what we really want to achieve is the concept of an open air open air bus, I shouldn't say rather than unit, open air bus, to allow for an electric frame, that is, to allow for accessibility into Bridgetown. The pedestrianization of Bridgetown will involve the redirection of traffic in Bridgetown, but like I say, it's too early to speak to that. I prefer to speak to that when we have the specifics. But to assure you, Minister, that is on the ministry's agenda, and we will be working on it. I also forgot to mention one thing in respect of the highways, the Highway 1 Improvement Project Phase 1. When that project is completed, motorists and commuters will see in Barbados what we've done in respect to footpaths and sidewalks. And the contractors are doing a great job in trying to accomplish that. So I'd prefer to say more about this program once we have finalized all the details in respect of the what I refer to the renewed urban corridor in Barbados.
My final question, Chair, Madam Chair. Now, Minister, you've said that this very ambitious capital works program, we've all said that it is part of government's counter-cyclical measures in response to the crisis, meaning simply that we are investing in a crisis situation in order to make sure that that the government can drive economic activity and maintain employment in a case where the private sector has stood still and the private sector has contracted, not because they want to, but because they have had to because of COVID. So I understand that this capital works program is a job-led growth program for the country. And what we're opting to do is, rather than what the last administration regrettably did, which is to inflate the wages and salaries by taking on permanent employees on a basis that was completely unsustainable and therefore wrecked the deficit and ballooned the debt, we have had to do it on a project-by-project basis. And that is the way that we've opted to approach this. Notwithstanding that, though, I have a concern about sustainability of delivery in the sector. And I have a concern about sustainability of employment in the sector. A lot of the young women and men in St. Michael South Central are interested in more long-term work in this sector. I know that there are things that the ministry is doing with respect to building of gabions, the needs that they have for well digging, and the kinds of technology that can be applied in those kinds of things. My question is really about how the Ministry of Transport, Works and Water Resources is working with other sectors, including the education sector and the private sector, to be part of a plan for sustainability, to make sure that we continue to have the labor and capacity that is needed for a medium to long-term capital works program beyond what we're doing in the next 1 or 2 years, to make sure that we continue to have the equipment that is available for engineers and others in the ministry to be able to do investigative work so that it doesn't take 6 months, 12 months, 18 months to do the kind of engineering work that will tell you what you need to do. And to make sure that overall you are building out a sector along with the private sector, you're building out sustainability so that you always have access to skilled labor, so that access to skilled labor that is able to get a decent salary, a decent wage, that you always have available equipment, and that you have small contractors as well as the larger contractors who are going to be available to be able to deliver in this sector. Because beyond the works program that is here in these estimates, we want to make sure that we will be able to continue maintaining roads, contributing to the Scotland District stabilization, and so on. So I'm asking if there is a plan for collaboration with other ministries in terms of training, in terms of capacity building, especially for small contractors, so that we can make sure that we always have the wherewithal to continue programs like this.
Thank you, Honourable Member. And that is something that we're certainly working on. For example, when the Transport Board procured the electric buses. We had the transfer of training and knowledge, and that was one component. And the reason why we did it is because, and the initiative was targeted at the Samuel Jackman Prescott Polytechnic. And what we did is that we allowed the engineers who came to Barbados to train local, not only the Transport Board Quality Assurance Department, but also students at that Polytechnic. And we did it because we felt it was absolutely necessary if we're moving in the direction of the future, and where we're going to have more electric vehicles on the island, and where persons would need to understand electronics, that it was absolutely necessary we did it. And that's one example. As it relates to other skill sets, for example, there's a deficit in Barbados with finding additional well diggers. That is a skill that we need to expand in Barbados and allow persons who are interested in getting that business, because we currently have a shortage as it relates to the transfer of knowledge within the ministry. We have an institutional strengthening program as part of an investment package that we have, and we're moving towards institutional strengthening, and that will allow us to work with not only TVEC and other agencies, but that will start to build out the institutional capacity, but also plan for the transfer of knowledge, not only within the ministry like I said, but also other agencies, including, as you rightly identified, educational institutions, to help us as we build out the sector. Now, I'm also aware that and you're quite right, the largest public sector investment program to be undertaken in the history of Barbados and to be led by the public sector, which is a first for Barbados, will also allow us in government to help build out not only capacity, but will then create opportunities and avenues for persons who want to become owners of small businesses, and those who want to grow from small to medium to large businesses. And that is the plan within the ministry as we pursue that program. Within the as you mentioned, the CAF, the sector-wide approach loan, there's also, because it's broad, we are also going to look and see whereby we can procure additional equipment for the ministry. And again, that is to help us sustain the works that we have to carry on. Over the next 3 years, commencing the financial year, Barbados is going to be very busy with capital works programs. Like I said, we have not only the CAF program, we have the Complant program targeted directly in the Scotland district area, but we also have the IDB Global Roads program. And in addition to that, we also have the ministry's plans for tenantry roads, community roads, and all those urban tracks that we need to fix. So there's a lot of work, but I'm also confident, having met with the contractors who've already said that they're on board and they really want to, they have for a while not been getting enough business, before our time of course, and they're really anxious to work with us and partner with us. And they too have also been recapitalizing and re-equipping themselves and their companies in order to take advantage of what. Now, I must also say this, that we are also going to involve what we call small business persons, the micro enterprise element, in helping us to build out some of these sidewalks, helping us to do some of the roads as well. So it's going to be a package design based on the ability of persons obviously to perform and get the job done, because that is the number one priority. We have to focus on results and getting the results. But it will be an inclusive package to help the what I call the micro enterprise level, as well as those who are establishing the business, to help us execute and sustain this program over the next 3 years at a minimum.
Thank you. Before I allow the Honourable Leader of the Opposition, I want to get to St. Philip North once and for all. I have not been seeing many roads up there. It has been explained to me with respect to the CAF program for the St. Catharines to Three Houses Road. That's falling to pieces. I know that's supposed to start in April. I want to know if that's still on the cards. I appreciate what you said about the sidewalk for St. Mark's. There's a big issue with the Fortescue, which involves the Honourable Member for St. John as well. Fortescue has one road in and one road out, which I think the ministry is aware of. When will that be addressed? The other thing is St. Philip and some areas of St. Johnny assume has issues with privately owned roads, which are, I would almost say half of the roads in St. Philip, maybe a little less. And we are having difficulty in getting those fixed because they're privately owned. Going forward, what is the plan for those? Do we acquire the lands? Do we just sit and ask the residents to give up their lands? What is the plan for that area? And your PS had described to me quite pleasantly, Mr. Cummins, I am grateful to you, about the wells. We have a few areas where there's flooding when it does rain. And as he explained to me, the issue in part was the wells and the condition of the wells. I want to have an update on that as well.
PS Cummins will respond to you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yes, good afternoon again, Madam Chair. We have identified a number of roads in St. Philip for the CAF program, but that will not be starting in April. It's probably going to start in the second quarter of the financial year. But to address the question of private roads, this is primarily in situations where persons live off of main roads, where you may have persons who are renting, and as we use the materials from our Mill and Pave program to allow those persons who live along those what we call urban or rural tracks to have all-weather roads. Sometimes that's where the challenge, and I think that's the challenge that you are having with respect to getting permission from the landowners. The acquisition process takes a very long time, so it's always better if the landowners can agree to have the roads, to have the tracks upgraded and provide a better all-weather surface. St. Philip is a challenge because, as you know, St. Philip probably, going back in the history, St. Philip and St. Lucie were really the two major landowning parishes in Barbados in the early days, and that still continues. And you may have persons who are family members or some who are paying rent living on lands, but they do not necessarily have a quote-unquote, I would say a classified road, because the tracts, I normally refer to them as unclassified roads based on the road classification order. But suffice it to say, in those situations, as we are continuing with our milling and paving program, we will have a significant amount of material, and it may be necessary for us. I know I did some visits with you, and you pointed out to me some areas where there were challenges. The greatest challenge is going to come in the agricultural subdivisions, because those roads are private, and they're very much for the use of the residents of those agricultural subdivisions. But the ministry is willing to work with you, Madam Chair, to assist and to see how best we can improve those surfaces. And if you can also do, I know you're doing a significant amount, if you can do a bit more PR on the ground and get the landowners to agree, then that will make our jobs a lot easier. With respect to the cleaning of wells, that's the program that is ongoing. When we visited, we saw a number of wells in St. Philip that have not been cleaned for a long time. Subsequent to that visit, a number of them have been assigned. But as Minister Cattle alluded, and this is one of the challenges that we are faced with in Barbados, where there is a limited number of well diggers, we do plan to have discussions with the BVTB and TVET, which are agencies of the Ministry of Education, to see how best we can have persons trained in the skill of well digging. I know that it is hard work, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be very lucrative given the number of wells that we have identified, and the number of wells to be cleaned. So we are in tune with the challenges that you have in St. Philip North. We've identified a number of those roads, especially under the CAF program, and I do expect that we can start towards the end of the second quarter of the financial year, which will be more like September, October.
Mr. Cummins, there are some urgent areas by, what's that, St. Catherine's area where the bridge has broken on both ends,
Yes.
as well as going into Supers. I'm not sure if they can wait on the CAF program, if we could do something in the meantime for those particular areas. I am told that a lady with a car more or less fell off the side of the road and the car had to be lifted out in that St. Catherine's wheelchairs area. So if something could be done relatively urgently, I would appreciate it.
We will, ma'am. St. Catherine's wheelchairs, as you just said, is treacherous, and I'm sure we will have to make an intervention there, more than likely temporary, certainly before the coming rainy season, because both the road edges on both sides, there's significant undermining of those road edges. So we will definitely have to make an intervention there. And Super is that road you spoke of going into Fortescue, which was built some years ago when the original road had collapsed. That's another area that we will also need to pay some significant attention to. And I think that may be a part of the Scotland District. We'll have to do some research and double check.
And the residents are complaining, like Whitehill, that there's only one entrance in and one entrance out. That falls into St. John as well, so that is creating some concern for the residents there. But we can move on. Honorable Leader of the Opposition. Thank you, Mr. Cummins.
You're welcome, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. Since I'll take lead from you, since you became somewhat parochial, of course you're concerned about your constituency, as you rightly ought to be. You don't want to be left out. You don't want to be left out. You don't want St. Philip North residents, constituents to be left out.
Not at all.
Not at all. So I'll take the lead from you and be a little bit parochial before I address perhaps two further questions. I want to thank this minister for the attention that the department under his portfolio, his ministry paid to the problem that existed at Passage Road. It took a little while to be fixed, but I gave Minister a call, and he readily said to me that he would have it acted on. It has been acted on. I saw it featured in the news media this week. This was an outstanding problem, I think, caused initially by some works of the Barbados Water Authority, and serious, dangerous excavated area left uncovered for quite a while. But has been seen to, and I thank him for that. That is at Inner Passage Road, Passage View. And I thank the minister and his team for that. There is also an ongoing drainage problem at Hinesbury Road, to which I also drew the minister's attention. He's promised action. And there has been some initial action, though it has now been stalled for a little while. I saw a middle page spread, I think, yesterday or the day before in the news media on that. Big middle page spread, I think, in one of the dailies, highlighting the ongoing problem. So I invite the minister to give renewed attention to that, to see what has caused the halt in the works. I think it may have been partly due to the lockdown period we were going through, but certainly that problem exists. It is not only a nuisance to the residents of Hinesbury Road, it is actually a serious public health threat, if only on a localized basis. Again, I ask for attention to be paid to the drainage situation at Bridge Gap. My political neighbor, the honourable member for St. Michael Northwest, would be aware of this. The seriously deep open drains are on the St. Michael West side, but they constitute a very real danger to persons traversing there, whether it is motorists or pedestrians, and that would constitute a danger to his people as well, or anybody passing. Should I have talked about that before? There are differing opinions as to how it ought to be handled, but I believe it does expose people to serious risk, and those with an engineering understanding of these matters would know best how it ought to be treated. So I just want to highlight it again. The other area is just outside on the border of St. Michael West. It passes what it has to do with the city. It also has to do with St. Michael South Central. And this is the water course that comes out of the country, passes through the area of the proposed botanical gardens, comes through the Prison Gully, comes into Lower Bridge Road and Hinesbury Road, and goes through just outside the Weymouth Pass to where there is this project, I think, to engage the entrepreneurial interests of young people. There's some kiosks, stalls, whatever they're called, vending facilities being established. My concern is, and I hope that some kind of engineering studies have been done to ensure that there is no impediment posed to the water course. That is an area historically has been given to serious flooding. All the water comes out of rural Barbados, heading towards the wharf and the ocean, Greenwich and the ocean, and it passes through there. I'm old enough to remember 1970 flood, when this was a major disaster area. I've never seen water on land in Barbados that high before or since. And there was a tragic loss of 2 lives back then. So I hope that nothing is being done in the construction of the project. I'm not objecting to the construction of the project, implementation of the project. My concern is that the appropriate studies would have been done to ensure that when the work is finished, facilities are available, that nothing has been done in that legitimate attempt to impede the flow of water through that area, and then we have serious other problems. Beyond those things, Madam Chair, I'd like to ask the Minister to the extent to which she's satisfied with the way the TAP program has been functioning, especially as it relates to the interests of the operators, the private vehicle public service operators. There are 2 sides to this equation, of course, and you may be satisfied with how it operates in terms of how it facilitates the transport authority in moving people in Barbados. But then there's the interest of the private operators, the Alliance of Owners of Public Transport. Their interests must be taken into consideration. Is the Minister happy the way that program has functioned? These private operators have contributed significantly to moving the commuting public in Barbados, especially in the last 10, 15 years, in significant numbers when the Transport Board was not in a position to properly do it. 80, 90% perhaps of the commuting public is using private sector operated vehicles. Now we've drawn some of them into the TAP arrangements. Are we satisfied that it is working properly in their interests? And can we really justify the 12 or 12.5% takings by government from these operators or the proceeds derived from the operations? How can we justify, and can we properly do so, that 12 or 12.5%? These guys have problems with the high costs, at least that's what they said to me when I met with them, problems with the high cost of insurance. Of course, the insurance arrangements are private arrangements, but certainly government must be in a position to use its influence to ensure that insurance rates charged these people for operating 5-figure insurance rates are not unjustly high. There are problems with the fuel tax introduced by this government. There are problems with other taxes, transfer tax, which I think has multiplied, 1,000%. And really, there are some concerns which I think legitimately they have. They must get the opportunity to air them to the extent that this minister is aware of these issues since he's new to the job. I wonder if he and the team are satisfied with that particular program. And then my second question, madam, has to do with the electric buses. Oh, they look nice, and we see a lot of them running on our roads. And almost like the Prime Minister did, we are tempted to say, we're lost. But my question is the appropriateness of those buses to Barbados. and I'm not in a position to say one way or the other. What I do know is that is in hearing from a few drivers, what they have said is that these buses are good buses, but they're not appropriate for use here in our road context. I don't know the extent to which that issue is an issue for the Ministry of Transport and Works. The question I have beyond that has to do with the ownership. Clarify for me the ownership of these buses. Are they Barbados state-owned? Are they owned in some partnership arrangement with some private entity? And what is the level of indebtedness which now exists for the Barbados taxpayers with respect to these buses?
Thank you, Honorable Member. I'll try to respond to your questions, concerns in the order that you raised them. Regarding the drainage problem at Hinesbury Road, you're referring effectively to Greenwich Road. That is where we're trying to create a box drain connected into the Headley drain to allow it to outflow onwards. The challenge that the residents had in Greenwich Road had to do with the fact that, again, like you said, the water course, all the water coming down, and then the area will be flooded. We completed phase 1 of the project, and we are now set to conclude phase 2 of that project by the end of this month, March 31. The crews are on site as I speak to you. They have been working. We did have a setback, and you're quite right. During COVID, for the 4 weeks during the month, we didn't have any staff on board because of the requirements for persons to practice their required health and safety for us to reduce the spread of the pandemic throughout Barbados. But I can assure you that the team is there. They're working hard to execute the completion of those works as requested. But like I said, phase 1 has been completed, and we're going through there with speed. With respect to your concern at the Bridge Gap, the team would have visited the ministry's team. I was part of the tour as well. We went to Bridge Gap. We explored multiple options. The issue is even covering the drain. We were advised against that, again, because of the water that comes upstream. But however, we are looking at a plan to have handrails within that area for the safety and security of residents and certainly motorists who traverse that area. We are also addressing some drainage works upstream to ease some of the flow of water that will come through to the Bridge Gap area. And we're pretty much working on that as I speak to you. There are some other plans that we have to institute, including digging new wells and also creating what we call pond areas to capture some of the water to reduce the flow. Because that's the challenge in Barbados. When there's significant rainfall, if you don't trap the water upstream, it flows all the way downstream straight into the ocean. And as we are becoming even a scarcer water society, we have to take action to prevent what we currently have in those low-lying areas. The water course situation at Weymouth, I believe that's been undertaken by another government agency. I'm not at will to speak to that at this point, but I can assure you that we would have been, the ministry, and particularly the drainage unit, would have been consulted on such a project. So I don't see there to be a major issue there. In respect of the TAP program and whether I'm satisfied, yes, I'm very satisfied. In my initial remarks, I made the point that the transport augmentation program, which was implemented long before I became minister, and that this government implemented, was designed to enable the carrying capacity of the transport board, and it's done exactly as it was intended to do. And I will also ask the chief operating officer of the transport board to speak to this matter as well. But I am very, very satisfied. The 12.5% TAP commission that is paid, we have terminals to maintain. We've just not so long ago, the Constitutional River Terminal. We're going to bring the operators, PSV operators at Spikestown into the terminal. We're also building out the Cheapside facility. And it's only 12.5%. The reality, as I've said to you before, that the public transport sector is worth $200 million. People don't stay in business if not making money. I know that because of the pandemic, they may have had a setback, like most businesses and the government in Barbados, particularly with its revenue position. But notwithstanding that, this government probably initiated a measure, and that measure was to suspend the 12.5% tax rate for about 6 months. Okay, I should also tell you that the board of the board of directors of the transport board, they meet with the TAP operators, and I'm sure Mrs. Holder will go into details about that on a regular basis. I've had an opportunity to meet with the operators in TAP as well. They had some concerns with respect to timeliness of payment. I believe we put those behind us and we paid them. There are also other concerns that we're working with them. And what we're doing is that even as they move to an electric fleet, because some operators indicated to us that they want to move into the realm of electric buses, and we applaud them for that. And that we had meetings with two entities who would have electric units in Barbados, and we're going to make the Fairchild Street terminal available. They will, of course, pay their own electric bill, but we are going to have a bay with the charging station that they will install and that they will pay for, but just the ease of operating their unit, so that they don't have to leave, for example, Fairchild Street and go maybe to their company base to recharge their units. And that's what we're doing. In respect to and I may also add, lest we forget, that the TAP operators, like the PSV operators, benefited from a substantial increase in bus fare. They did. And that's why I can tell you off the top, it's a $200 million business. I've also met with the operators, PSB operators. We've had the discussions with them. And I can also tell you that they're very much on board with our cashless initiative, and they really want to come on board with that program. So I don't think there are major issues in that respect, and certainly I plan to meet with them. I believe I'm going to meet with one entity again next week, subject to correction, but I think it's in the calendar for next week. And we will meet with them, and we will listen to them as I always do. As I said, this ministry will be transparent, we're going to be empathetic, and we're going to be sensitive. And that's what we're going to do, and we're doing that. In respect of the electric buses and the question as to the appropriateness of the buses, I can tell you, as a former chairman of the Transport Board, not in this last going down, but before, whenever we are speccing the purchase of buses, there's a very long procedure. You go through, you spec the bus, you look at the different angles, you check everything. It's a very long list that we go through. And we do that because we have to not only protect the integrity of our roadways, but we also have to protect the integrity of the bus, because when you buy a bus, that's a major transaction. In respect of the electric buses, they're working well. We don't have any problems. I don't know who would say that they're inappropriate, but what I can tell you that I pretty much can tell you that they are very appropriate for this tropical landscape. I was part of a delegation along with, and forgive me for referring to names, but they were part of the delegation. The person who is now the chairman of the Transport Board was an engineering background, and also the Ministry of Transport and Works workshop manager. We journeyed to 2 locations to spec the buses to ensure that they conform and to ensure that all the charging and all the required electrification and electrical infrastructure that were required, that we were on course. And I can tell you, heart on hand, that we procured the buses, we brought them to Barbados, we had electrical charging infrastructure in place, the buses are being charged, and they are saving us a substantial amount of money. Even though we're paying for electricity on diesel, we have reduced our diesel and overall operating cost per bus, and that is a fact. And I think they're very appropriate, which informed the decision, the government's decision, to procure an additional 14 buses, and that's the truth. And they're working well, and like I said, they continue to grace the roadways of Barbados, and that's a fact. In respect of whether we have debt for the buses, there's no debt. The government of Barbados made provision for the Transport Board to fund these buses. The government set aside $50 million, I think it's correct, yes, 50? $45 million, stand corrected, $45 million to fund the purchase, including the electrical infrastructure. We delivered the buses, the first set of buses on time. We delivered all the electrical infrastructure on time and within the required budget. And I can tell you, as a Barbadian, I'm very proud, I'm very happy that those persons who form part of the subcommittee, as when I returned to transport as chairman, and when I returned there, and we entrusted the committee to lead that team, led by Mrs. Linda Holder. She did an excellent job with her team. And that team included persons including the government's chief electrical engineering officer. And we have every reason as a country to feel very proud of the fine accomplishment. And I can also tell you now that even the powertrain units with the new electric engine that we put in those to help enhance fuel efficiency, they too have worked extraordinarily well and they have helped us to reduce not only the diesel bill, but the parts, because at the time we were changing out brakes and brake drums every 4 to 6 weeks. When we did the first powertrain unit, we went almost 3 to 4 months, I think it was 6 months, before we even have to look at the brakes. And that tells you the remarkable story that this government has accomplished in respect of public transport. We have a long way to go. There's still a lot of stuff to go, a lot of ideas that we have on the cards to execute. But I can assure you, Leader of the Opposition, it was money well spent. And I can also tell you it saved the taxpayers a substantial amount of money. I will ask Mrs. Linda Holder, who was responsible for that project, to say a few comments.
Good evening. My name is Linda Holder. I am the Chief Operations Officer of the Transport Board. As the Minister just indicated, the electric buses that were recently purchased, the 33 electric buses that were recently purchased, they are wholly and solely owned by the government of Barbados. The government did put aside $45 million for us to do this project, and we were able to bring in those 33 buses, and the charging stations that came with them came in at a total of just over $10 million US. Then we were able to do the infrastructural works here in Barbados without running over our budget. The remaining sums is what is presently being used to purchase an additional 14 electric buses. As it relates to the appropriateness of the buses, I am not sure the basis of the comment, but I would say that the only challenge we have experienced with those buses on the roads of Barbados is related specifically to some of the road infrastructure, and those things are being addressed on a daily basis by the ministry. We've not had any breakdowns of those buses, and we've not had any sort of mechanical or electrical issues with the buses. We are also very comfortable that we were able to address a number of the issues that had been raised with us by other members of the traveling public. This is the month of the disabled, and when we did our analysis and our specifications for the buses, we engaged them as well to make sure that we would have addressed some of the concerns that they had raised. We ended up with a situation that the buses were so well received, but we created another concern where the buses were too quiet, and we're still working with the Council for the Disabled to address that. The buses came with air conditioning, kneeling technology. It came with an on-bus announcing system, special alerts for persons on board the bus to be able to indicate when the bus would be stopping, and we'll be able to distinguish that from other features. We also have more cameras on board the buses, which assist us with the safety and security on those buses as well. And I will just add here that we've taken it a step further, and because of the issues related to COVID, we've added hand sanitizing dispensers on every one of those buses as well. So we've been able to address a number of the issues. The buses come with Wi-Fi technology, GPS systems to allow us to track them, and we were able to purchase software that allows us to monitor the state of charge of the buses remotely, so we're able to figure out if the bus is working appropriately and if the batteries are functioning appropriately and where those buses are located at any given point in time. I hope that I answered the questions that the Honourable Member raised on the electric buses.
Okay, honorable members, ministers, and your team, we have about 50 more minutes left and several persons ready to speak. So if you could keep your comments and questions to 3 minutes and answers as such, I would be grateful. Pardon? 50. Okay, and that applies to the next speaker as well. Honorable member for St. James North.
Thank you, Chair. First, wish to congratulate the two ministers and, on the approach they've taken and their team to their task, and like to be, in terms of parochial, in terms of my constituency, for my first comment. I know, Minister, that you have outlined a number of roads to be done throughout the country, Scotland District and other areas, highways, but St. James North, my constituency, I wish to give you the opportunity to tell the residents of my constituency what roads are being proposed to be done in this coming financial year in that constituency. From the time I became a member of Parliament 8 years ago, even before I'd been constantly writing ministers of transport and works. Not you, sir, I haven't written you yet. You had toured with me, I think in November, as well as the honourable member for St. John in some parts of the constituency. But there are about 17 roads in St. James North that are in a state of disrepair. I noticed that I think we had a survey a couple years ago which said that 70% of the roads in Barbados are either poor or in a bad state. And while I appreciate that, I think that some roads in St. James North are particularly bad, especially where I took you, sir, and Minister Griffith in Aston Hall. All the roads there essentially on the St. James North side are pretty poor, as well as of Rotdunda. We were all requested to name one road in our various constituencies which we will wish to be repaired, and Rotdunda is the one in St. James North. So I'll give you that opportunity, sir. Secondly, on the issue of the quality of water, we know that many pipes in Barbados are between 50 and 100 years old, and there's a need for total reconstruction and replacement, refurbishment of pipes. And St. James North hasn't escaped that in terms of quality of water, poor quality brown water in many areas. And I'm wondering if you wish to, ask you to expand on that, sir, within certainly the constituency of St. James North. Finally, Madam Chair, wish to speak on the vexing problem of inability of residents in some parts of St. James North, some parts of Aston Hall, for instance, Clark's Road, some parts of Rotdunda, to be able to access water supply because of the Zone 1 policy. And while we understand that we have to maintain the integrity of the water supply system in Barbados, that is extremely important. I believe from an engineering viewpoint in 2021, the third decade of this century, that there are scientific possibilities to regulate and reform the Zone 1 policy position of our country and allow water in some of these various households. Some of these houses that have been present for 30, 40 years, it isn't that they are recent squatters. So, and this has implications as well too in terms of the ability to install waterborne indoor toilet facilities, again very important, and one of the policies of this government to replace pit toilets with indoor toilet facilities by 2027. I know, sir, that there's a water zonal or water zoning groundwater protection policy in place, and I'm wondering if you could speak to that as well within the context of this issue of water supply, the difficulty of the Barbados Water Authority supplying water in these Zone 1 areas. Thank you, Madam
Thank
Chair.
you.
Thank you, honorable member. Well, I wouldn't be able to give you, honorable member, a list of all the roads that you would like done. I know you said you submitted 17, but I'm not in a position at this point in time to confirm the number of roads. But rest assured, when we commence that program, we will communicate with you. We'll be in dialogue with you, and we will let you know in advance, as I would always do, when we intend to commence roadworks in your area. In respect, I must, however, tell you that we are finalizing the Carlton to Rockdundo stretch, and I think you spend a lot of time in your constituency, so you will know that. And I'm also pleased to tell you, even though you didn't ask me, that the drain at Clark's Road, this is one that connects on to the retention pond to take the water off the Ashton Hall area. We did a tour last year. I'm pleased to tell you that is 75% complete, so you'll be very happy for that. In respect of the vexing, to quote you, problems of the access to water in the Zone 1, what I would like to do now is to ask Dr. Mwanza of the Barbados Water Authority to speak to your specific concern. Dr. Mwanza.
Okay, good afternoon, Mr. Oh, sorry, to the representative, Mr. Hinkson. I'm John Mwanza again, advisor to BWA. Over the last couple of weeks in February, we actually held town hall meetings to provide an update on where we are with regard to the updates to the zoning system. With regard to those persons who are currently in Zone 1, the proposed amendments speak to a partial reduction in the size of what was called Zone 1. So we now have a Zone A and Zone B encompassing parts of what was Zone 1. In Zone A, there will still be a restriction on provision of new services to people that try to develop in Zone A. That is being restricted basically only for developments related to provision of water. However, it has been recognized that there are some people who have settled in those areas who have to be addressed. The position that has been arrived at is that persons that are in Zone 1 now and who will remain in Zone A when the amendments are implemented, we will seek to provide upgraded on-site sewage systems to those residents. How that will be funded is still to be determined, and they will then be provided with water services. But the position also speaks to the fact that no additional encroachment will be allowed. And to facilitate that, the Lands and Survey Department has actually done drone surveys of those areas to ensure that we know who is there now and we know who will be encroaching going forward, and we'll be able to address the encroachments. One of the problems we've had historically is the issue of use of affidavits for people who came in later. So that issue be addressed. And those who are now in Zone 2, when they were in Zone 1 previously, will also be provided with waterborne facilities. With regard to the discolored water problem, we recognize that is an area of concern over a large sector of the Barbados, which results from the type of mains that were used then, before the mid-70s. Those pipes didn't have a liner to protect them from the water, which is corrosive. So the only way you could address those is replace them, and the Water Authority has prepared a strategic mains replacement program for which we are seeking funding to implement. So, and we know that the area in question, especially St. Silas Hill, is one that suffers from frequent breaks. That is one of the mains that is in the prioritized list, and we'll be implementing it as soon as we have the funding available.
Thank you. Honourable Member for St. Michael Northwest.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, I wish to congratulate both ministers along with their management team for such an outstanding and distinguished performance since taking control of the ministry. My constituents and I have some challenges with drainage across my constituency. The minister, he will be aware of some of these challenges. I wrote the minister on numerous occasions, and he is aware of these challenges that are presently existing. I have a number of drainage wells that have not been cleaned for over 10 years, and I also would like to know what plans are in place for drainage to rectify this issue. That's my first question. And I also wish to take this opportunity to publicly thank the minister on the behalf of my constituents and the constituents of St. Michael West for kindly paving Galumnia Road. That is a blessing for us, and I want to thank you for that, Minister. Also, Deaconsmere Road remain incomplete. I know the process was started under the former minister last year, but as we speak, a part of Deaconsmere Road remain incomplete, and I also would like to know when the remainder of that road will be completed. That's my second question. And for the last 3 years, I have been pleading with the ministry in terms of having row humps installed across the constituency, but within various communities such as Galoon, Ashton Village, Brandon's, and Farm Road. I also would like to know what are the requirements of MTW in order to have row humps installed. Lord forbid, I would not like that it would take an accident to occur or a child be knocked down by a vehicle in order to achieve the installation of these row humps. So, Minister, if you could kindly let me know what I have to do to have this request honored. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor, Deputy Speaker. In respect of the drainage, you are quite right. We facilitated a tour with you last year. We have, this is the one leading from what I refer to as the drain commencing there from Solo, going through Deacon's Farm, all the way through to the Spring Garden Industrial Estate. I think that's the one you're referring to, probably amongst others. But just to let you know, we are in the process of commencing the pre-construction works. And when I say pre-construction works, having the survey going, taking the levels to ensure. We also have to explore whether there are any challenges in respect of the boundaries, but I will ask Mr. Yeager to speak to that matter very shortly. The ministry recognizes your thanks for the roadworks at Goodland. Certainly going around the cemetery, that obviously was in very, very poor shape. We responded and responded well. We had to correct a hydrant that was leaking there, and the Barbados Water Authority fixed that challenge. And I can say to all Barbadians who traverse that road that it's a wonderful stretch, and I'm happy that your residents and your constituents are very happy. In respect of the incomplete Deacons Road, I'm not sure the length of what is required there, but I will certainly speak with the technical team within the ministry, and I will seek to address that for you within the coming financial year, and you have my word on that for sure. In respect of road humps, we have to take this very seriously. There's a process within the ministry that we have to follow, but I'm also mindful of the fact that as we execute major road works across Barbados, that we are receiving complaints that in particular the cyclists and motorists who are traveling at excessive speeds, and we are going to address the issue in respect of road humps when we construct roads. So I give you that undertaking. And then there are some other areas that we're going to focus on, that we have to focus on. What I would like to do at this stage is to invite Mr. Charles Yeager of the Drainage Division to give you an update in respect of some of the concerns you raised with respect to cleaning and also the proposed box drain. Mr. Yeager.
Charles Yeager, Drainage Division, and Minister of Water Resources and Transport Works and Water Resources. Yes, we had visited the site with the representative during flooding last year, and the Drainage Division is undertaken to conduct surveying work and pre-construction work, as the minister said, for planning the works. We have not been able, because of the lockdown, to continue right through. This is drained from Solo, north of Solo drain, to Spring Garden via Deacons, and it drain does cross Deacons Road. We have identified the sites, but one of the concerns we have there is land ownership. It is immediately north and hugs the Psychiatric North Hospital site. So we will maybe have some delays in terms of acquisitions. But you did say, Minister, that you will speak to residences and get some permissions for access through the alignment of the drain. So we're not in a position to start this year because we don't have money allocated in our vote for it. But sure, in terms of shelf ready for the next financial period, 2022-23, unless we go for supplementary and have that work done.
Thank you. Honourable Member for St. James South.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I want to congratulate the ministry, the minister and his team, as well as the former minister, for the work that they're doing and the hope that they're bringing to many residents and constituents who desperately need their services to help make their lives better. One of the areas that would be of concern is the issue of transport. In St. James South, I have a number of communities that have some older people who who no longer drive or don't have access to a vehicle, and they now have to catch the bus. And we don't have as regular a service as we need, and how buses run are not convenient to help Barbadians do their business well. Very often you have to catch two buses to get where you need to go. So I know that I did hear that the Ministry of Transport and Works had plans, and I was very happy to hear Ms. Holder share what are some of the additional features that they have put on the buses, but I wanted to ask if she could share what are some of the plans for reorganizing the way in which buses run so that Barbadians can get to places more conveniently without having to go to town first to get another bus to go almost as far back up as you've come. And I know you could appreciate that, Madam Chairperson, trying to get from the polyclinic in St. John over to...
That was one of my issues that I brought up with the ministry too.
Yes.
And when you're finished, I will tag along behind you.
And we certainly have that problem in St. James South. So I would like to know if plans are in place and how far along you are at the moment in reorganizing the flow of how buses run so that Barbados works more efficiently.
Added to that, before you answer the minister, I had spoken to, I think it was the CEO, a very nice gentleman with respect to the bus routes. I want to say thank you for restarting the bus route going into Well House. However, as the honorable member just mentioned, we are having issues with the cross-country. The Ministry of Health has seen it fit to open the St. John Polyclinic for 24 hours. But in order to get, for instance, from my house, if I were to catch a bus, it would take me maybe 20, to get from Sanford to, say, the beginning of St. John, it could take me 15 minutes to walk. To get from that to that same area from my house is 2 buses. And I don't find that to be efficient. What's the plans for making that a bit better, as the honorable member just mentioned?
Thank you both. We have conceptualized some additional plans for the Transport Board, including transfer stations and the like. What I would like to do is to ask the Chief Executive Officer of the Transport Board, Mr. Fabian Wharton, to address those matters. Mr. Wharton.
Thank you, Minister. Good afternoon, honorable members. My name is Fabian Wharton, CEO of the Transport Board. It is correct that there are some challenges with linking commuters from one end of the island onto the next end of the island. So, for example, from St. Lucie to St. Philip, or in the same parish to traverse, let's say, from 6 roads over to St. John's Polyclinic, and those kind of things. What we had done, especially as it relates to the St. John's Polyclinic issue, we would have went up there with a team, myself, Mrs. Holder, and the operations manager. We would have created what we call an Eastern Circle, which goes through the parish of St. Philip, parts of St. John, circles by the Polyclinic, and comes right the way around back to 6 roads in a circle. So we are creating what we call circles and sending that information up. I know there were some queries with the 2 circles that we presented to you as it relates to one of the link roads missing. And we have made some changes to that as well. So those 2 designs are completed, and we are in the process now of looking at when we are going to start those. There's also a Bathsheba to Gore Hill as well for the St. John Polyclinic extended opening hours. That goes from Bathsheba, St. Elizabeth Village, Harso, Chamber Rosa, from my memory. Then it comes around like Todd Corner, Erie Hill, and then it goes through that's Roach Village, it's called Roach Village, Sweet Vale, and that circle, which will allow persons in St. Joseph to get to the Gore Hill David Thompson complex as well. And that service we have tentatively put to start at 7:15 a.m. from Bathsheba on a Sunday to Saturday and run every 2 hours. So we are developing these circles. We also have the Southern Circle that we put back in as well, which goes right through from Oistins, starts at Oistins, and it goes throughout the southern part of the island, Thornbury Hill, Pilgrim Road, passes the airport, then goes through Curtains, Mangrove Depot, as well as St. Patrick's, Fairview, Coverley, Leadville, and then it circles all the way around, goes through Vauxhall, Sheraton, comes across the ABC Highway, Top Rock Runabout, Maxwell, and back to Oistins. So we do recognize that in an environment where persons need to commute more quickly, especially quicker, especially given that if we reduce commute times, we also improve productivity in the entire economy. So we are looking at this extensively. We have also made some adjustments to our ABC connection, which takes persons from Hotown all the way up to Bailey's Primary School, just here by Bailey's Primary School as a turnaround point. So that gives a connection all the way from the west coast into the east of the island right up to Bailey's Primary School. So these are the things that we're continuing to do. And what we do, we take a lot of this information from the members and from the public. We get calls and we take that information, we go and we drive the routes and see what is the best way to design it. And there's another one like the Oistins via Churchill to Bridgeton, which allows persons who want to get in that area, like in Kingsland Main Road from Oistins, there's no buses really to take them there. So that's another one that we're looking at as well. And then we also introduce things like the Mount Bremerton via Orange Hill and these other services based on the feedback that we would have received from the public and as well as concerns raised by members of Parliament. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That gives me hope that we'll have something for St. James South and connecting our people easily with Warrens and other places. I want to thank you for the roads that you have identified that you are going to do for us in St. James South. I have the assurance from the minister they were going to start them in January, but obviously COVID made it impossible, so I'm trusting that now we are easing out of lockdown, that those plans will come back into place to deal with the roads at Husbands, which is in extremely bad repair. It's one of the worst roads in my constituency, and that needs to be done. Endurance as well, and Halls Village. However, you have a big road that I understand will cost significant sums to do, which is the Prior Park Road. It is awful, bandy, unsafe, not lighted properly. And to add to the concerns of the constituents of Prior Park is the fact that the water mains there are so badly rusted, they get brown water coming out most of the time. And that is an issue. I'm hoping that you will be able to fix that road and deal with the mains at the same time, as well as sort out the low water pressures that the adjacent village, Halls Village, is now experiencing for over a year. That is affecting residents to be able to get ready for work, take care of elderly relatives who can't move and bathe themselves. It really is an issue. They've been extremely patient, but we do need that to be prioritized. One of the things that we would ask, and this was another ask by the Prior Park residents, is we are all very interested in exercise and keeping healthy. And we had requested that when you're doing the main road coming from Westmoreland and over by the Honourable Member for St. James North, that Midway Road, that when you're coming down, that you continue to extend the 3-foot wide pavement, that it would continue all the way down to the Warrens intersection, and then put one going through the same Prior Park Road and come around by Queen's College to meet back with the 3-foot wide pavement that ends there by the traffic light. They have asked for this because it makes a complete circuit that is safer for them to run on, and it would encourage more people. It is a safer route for them to do early morning exercise, and they really would appreciate if that could be accommodated when you're actually bringing the road down. Thank you. I wait to hear what your responses are.
Thank you very much. In respect of Prior Park, that road, we have that on the list of what we refer to as the calf roads. We will obviously address the issue of the sidewalk. Obviously, these things, we have to be mindful of the costs. But taking into consideration when we can do a package, that is sidewalk as well as changing out mains, we will do that as required and as needed. So I will give you that assurance. In respect of the brown water, that's part of what Dr. Mwanza would have informed members about not so long ago. That is within that the per issue with the brown water. That's within the same Bagatelle loop that we intend to address. In respect of the roads in St. James, yes, we were going to commence work of those in January. The new date for those roads to start will be next week. I believe it's on Monday that we start. We did have a setback, and you're quite right, but we are going to come through and follow through on our commitment to execute those roadworks there. Thank you.
Thank you. Honourable Member for St. Philip West.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. First, let me thank the Minister and the Ministry for the work that they've been doing, especially in the constituency of St. Philip West. But there are a number of things, and forgive me if I may sound like a little bit antsy on these, but I've been coming to estimates almost every year now, asking about the same things. One is the flood-prone areas within my constituency. It is well known, and I'm sure that for those people who live up there and around the country, Lowlands, Oldbury, and the Four Square Woodburn areas are always subject to flooding. And it is, in my mind, interesting that when we had the issue on the South Coast, the then minister, who happened to be the representative also for the area at the time, was touting all of these things about injection wells and all of these solutions that they were looking for based on the fact that this was a tourist belt. Now, the truth is, a tourist can come to Barbados. If he or she doesn't like it, they can get on a plane and leave. The people who live in St. Philip West do not have anywhere else to go. And we have been at this now for a number of years. And I know that Mr. Yearwood and some of his team have been out, but I'm a little bit concerned, and forgive me if I heard you wrong, please correct me, but one of the members before me asked about drainage, and I thought I heard that there was not a lot of money or anything put in place for that in this financial year. Now, we are going to be going into a rainy season very soon, and the problems in those areas, if not at least given some urgent attention, can end up with the loss of life. Last year, we had a situation where a senior citizen had to be rescued by the fire service in the Woodburn area. Now, we are talking about people's lives. This is not about politics. This is not about me as a representative, none of those things. This is about people's lives. And I think that the time has come. I've been very silent on this for now. Very nice. But I think now is the time where we have to get serious about this particular issue. So I'm putting that on the table early o'clock. The second thing is signage. Signage within not only my constituency, but all across the island needs some urgent attention. If I were a tourist in Barbados, I don't know how I would getting from one place to the next, because the signage is poor. And it has been like this for a very, very long time, and there seems to be no real urgency in being able to address that particular issue. On the matter of the flooding also, I have to go back there. It is disgraceful in front of my own constituency office that I have been asking, pleading, writing letters, doing whatever I need to do to have some help, again, in mitigating the area for flooding and also for lighting, which again is another problem within the constituencies that I don't think many people talk too much about. But those are just three of the major issues that I have to deal with. And I remember 2 years ago, just like the member for St. Philip North I spoke about Breezy Hill as being a place that has one entrance and one exit. And if there is ever any sort of a catastrophe in that area, again, we are going to be dealing with loss of life. And I understand the constraints and all the other things, but I think these matters are of such importance that even if we can start to do small things to mitigate these problems, it would help. But Minister, like I said at the beginning, I do appreciate the work that you and the ministry have been doing, and the former minister, but these things are pressing, and I think they really need some urgent attention. And I'd like to hear from you and your team when some action is going to be taken. I really don't want to hear about we are considering or we are thinking about. Thank you.
Thank you, honourable member. Let me tell you that we have some funds available in this financial year that we're hoping to execute and complete some projects, and I'll update you shortly. And then I'll also ask Mr. Charles Yearwood of the Drainage Division to reinforce some of the points as well. In respect of flood mitigation measures, I must tell you that on a weekly basis, I meet with Mr. Charles Yearwood of the Drainage Unit, and we go through the plans for drainage to ensure that the ministry's program is being executed. Mr. Yearwood provides the ministry, the permanent secretary in the first instance, that comes to me, with a list of wells, a status of wells report, as well as a second report that he and his team worked on. I must congratulate them for the work they did on that and those documents. Flood mitigation measures to recharge the aquifer in Barbados. I'm delighted to let you know, honourable member, that we've started the Woodburn Southwest, where we're going to have a detention pond there. I'll let Mr. Yearwood speak to the percentage completion. At Burling Road, Woodburn, we've completed the retention pond. That's 155 meter long by 5 meter times 2 meters deep water course and clear below the existing road levels. And of course, we have completed the road there at Berlin Road for the residents. In respect of the Warren, that's the water course within the east boundary of the Gordon Waters Primary School, which cuts across into your area. There's a potential, a retention pond. And as I speak to you, we've completed 75% of the works there. Those are just some that I thought I would mention, but I can tell you that I'm on top of this. And on a weekly basis, like I said, we have the drainage unit leader meeting with us in the ministry, giving us updates on the status of wells and the measures that we're taking to recharge the aquifer. I can show you this document anytime, and I get this on a weekly basis from the drainage unit. In respect of signage, the ministry will be executing a signage and street infrastructure program that I alluded to earlier in my opening remarks, and that will continue. With respect to street lights, what I would recommend is that you send a letter, and when we're sending this applies to all members of parliament, and when you send a letter, simply identify the pole number that you would like us to install a street light. So address the letter to the permanent secretary, which is a standard, include location and the pole number, and I can assure you that I have a very competent permanent secretary who will stay on top of these matters. And if you copy me, of course I will respond, and I will also follow up because we have a weekly utilities meeting. So I will ensure that that's done. In respect of the Breezy Hill one entrance, one exit, what I will do when we return to the ministry, I will review that matter, and I will come back to you. And I know that you've spoken to me in respect of Cottage Vale, and that is another road that we have, I believe, within the CAF program to execute. We are going to execute that when we commence all these works that I alluded to in the next financial year. But I'll ask Mr. Charles Yearwood of the Drainage Unit to provide you with a further update. Mr. Yearwood.
Yes, I heard the passion of Minister John King. We visited last tour about within last month. The ministry for some time had focus on wells, and we recognized for some time that wells are not most efficient for reducing flooding on the roadways, in that the wells have an infiltration capacity, and we went for other options that will increase or decrease the flood risk. Minister John King, I think the minister said to you the works we are undertaking. We have taken decision, and yes, like I explained in the tour, or on the tour rather, that Woodbourne, Berlin Road, Waldron's is one of priority ones in that the kind of floodplain we have after heavy rains. So I have to report that those are the works. If they had the same level of flooding we had it last time, we probably reduce flooding about 50%. We have monies available, and you'll see in the estimates for retention ponds, and we will continue to do works there and across the other parts of Barbados based on a priority. In terms of the well program, we have wells undertaken, I think at Cottage Vale, I don't remember the sites, but the number of sites, a couple of sites within your constituency. But again, we have a well contract, and we have monies again allocated well contract, and we'll continue to do works in your constituency across Barbados as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We now have 10 more minutes. Continue with the Honourable Member for Christchurch East. It's not maybe two.
I give way to Minister Ford. I give way to Minister.
Both of you will get to speak.
Minister, I want to thank you for your presentation, and I know that things are very difficult because of the mammoth undertakings by your ministry in what is perhaps the most difficult financial time that we've been through. And there's a lot of pressure on you to deliver. To that end, as I said, I want to thank you and commend you and your team, your board, your previous board, for the hard work that you've done, especially in putting the Barbados Water Authority where it is, and also in kickstarting the development programs for the Ministry of Transport and Work. I just want to be a little bit more parochial in my question. I know that we have a series of roads that were scheduled to have been started. I know the reasons why the roads have not been started, and I trust that in the fullness of time we will get the promised roads, so I won't dwell on them. But my concern right now is the persons in the Ferry Valley and Time Bottom area who are suffering in a major way from the damaged road occasioned by the repair works to the runway at the Grantley Adams International Airport. The road was treacherous. I see that some interim remedial action was actually taken to address the issue, but that has almost made it a little bit worse. I just want to know, what is the plan for there? There's some suggestion that the road should just be scraped and wet down periodically. Right now, I know the residents are actually complaining for a lot of dust into their homes. It is a major, major issue, and I would like to know what you're doing, or what is the plan to alleviate the distress that they're facing. And if I can urge you to reach out every once in a while to let them know as to where we are, the progress, the expected time for completion, any challenges you may have, and also just to hear from the residents. Let somebody drive through there periodically to hear from the residents so that we can address the immediate concerns they have with respect to their standard of living. Out there is a mess, and it is very, very difficult conditions for people to live in. I know that the works are necessary. They are critically necessary and necessary for completion before we properly open back up our airport and we get going in a post-COVID environment. But having said that, although they're necessary, the concerns of the residents for the effects and impacts that they're feeling cannot be ignored, and I would like to know what is the plan to address them. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. And of course, let me also thank you for all the work you did at the Barbados Water Authority prior to assuming your new ministerial position. In respect of the Ferry Valley Road, I can confirm that it is on the ministry's list of roads to be completed in the new financial year. You are quite right that the road suffered significantly as a result of the works that had to be undertaken at the Grantley Adams Highway, because that was a major thoroughfare for the trucks and all other heavy duty equipment. Indeed, the permanent secretary brought the matter to my attention because he traverses that area every day, and also Mr. Pt2, who's the Deputy Chief Technical Officer. So I give you the commitment, and I give the residents of Fairy Valley the undertaking that the road has been earmarked for completion in next financial year. We have had preliminary estimates of the road. It's going to cost us $1.2 million to repair that road and to reconstruct it, and that we will do what we can do. Now, in respect of the area where we did some, minor rehabilitative works in order to actually bring a sense of to reduce the difficulty, I should say, of especially motorists traversing the area. We are going to do some minor stuff, not major, because like I said, we have to do reconstruct the road there. But you have our commitment that the road will be executed in the next financial year, and it's, like I said, $1.2 million.
The other part of my question is relating to the water issues in the Gibbons area. Can you provide some update as to what the problem has been identified as and what is being done to deal with it, and when the residents in the Gibbons Brow area and those Platinum Heights, those affected areas, can expect to get some relief?
Thank you for the question, honorable member. The issues or the problems that you're having at the Gibbons area is one in relation to elevation. Now, that particular area is being fed from the Providence system, and the recommendations from the team at the BWA is to connect this particular area to Rising Sun. And if we connect to the Rising Sun area, because of the higher elevation, it will provide solutions to what is happening at your particular location. Now, the reality is that we are experiencing an issue as it relates to resources. We need to have another team or two in place at the BWA that will help to alleviate and solve some of the issues pertaining to your particular area. But again, the major issue there is one of elevation, the fact that the Gibbons area is so close in elevation to the Providence system that in peak times, they will be getting the supply kind of last. So what is happening is the proposal is to move from Providence to Rising Sun. But I will ask Dr. John to explain the more technical stuff for you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Abrams. I don't think I can add much to what the minister has explained, because essentially you have a situation where the reservoir that is supplying the area is at about the same elevation as the area that is supplying. So the static head, since it's not a pumped system, will be a problem. And the solution that has been proposed is to connect that to a higher reservoir. And the initial planning has been done. We have conducted a route survey to determine which area the pipe would have to go through. So that work will start as soon as we have the additional resources that the minister talked about.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Honourable Member for St. Thomas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I too will wish to add the warm sentiments to the Honourable Minister and his team, and indeed the previous minister, who would have made some strides to ensure that the development of Barbados gets back on track after so many lost years of the neglect, particularly the constituencies that were represented by the Barbados Labour Party. We are now seeing some inroads that are helping us to be able to treat to our citizens and others in a better way. And my first concerns are to do with the distinguished constituency of St. Thomas. That is an integral part of the Scotland district where we are prone to slippage, and we do have areas of slippage, particularly Bloomsbury, Chapman's Village, Carrington's Village, Kingfield, Ericott, and the list goes on. I want to indicate that there has been serious degradation of the major road networks and the impact of the drainage systems on those roads, which have got the residents extremely touchy. But I acknowledge that COVID-19 has really taken a dent in our economy, and therefore I'm not complaining. I'm just asking, as the year goes by and we see improvements in the economy and so on, that we will get our slice of the cake in having those areas upgraded to the best of our capacity. However, as long as we can open the tourism again, there are about 10 places of attractions in the parish, and none of the roads leading to any of those attractions is good. And therefore, it would mean some kind of rehabilitative effort from the Ministry of Public Works to be able to assist in having them in a condition, because one of the very prominent tourism aspects of the project, meaning the buses and the tour guides and so, one of the leading ones has asked that their vehicles don't go anywhere near Kingfield to be able to get to the Highland Outdoor Tours or to Welshman Hall Gully and those areas, and that was before COVID kicked in. And therefore, I want to find out from the Honourable Minister and his team what plans there are for the link roads, particularly Carrington's Village, Ericott, Kingfield, and those others that will link up, especially Bloomsbury, that has always been slipping in a very serious way. And that would be my first query, please.
So thank you, Minister. I can confirm to you that Carrington's, that is in the the compliant road network that we are proposing to fix, and the area of the Sturgis junctions to Flower Forest, that is also on the ministry's agenda. I have the list in front of me, but I will just let you know that yes, we have those, and then we have Highway 2 going to Vaucluse. That's also, like I said, the Carrington Village, St. Thomas area, which is Welshman Hall, going to Bloomsbury Tenantry. That's under the compliant program. And then we also have a number of roads that we've identified for the good people of St. Thomas under our CAF roads program. I can tell you, for example, I think it's Bridgefield and Content, Bridgefield, Content, to name a few. We have those on our list. Hangman's Hill as well, as I've been advised. We have those on our list for you and the people of St. Thomas.
Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. I trust that Shopville is in it as well, because that road that leads to the Mangrove landfill and the SBRC and so, that is a roller coaster road. It really is in need of good repairs. But as I said, I'm not going to be in any way disrespectful or anything. I just want to get word, because the questions are coming and the emails and all that, as you will appreciate. That has been for many years that we have not had any assistance. My other question is associated with what arrangements has the government got with utility companies? Not only the ones under the government's watch, but indeed those utility companies like the light and power and so on. I find that over the past 2 years, we have had some challenges. There are major roads, and the Honourable Minister Griffith knows of what I speak. The one over in Farm Path leading from Mount Hillaby, until a Sunday evening, one man's car broke off, the tire broke off just about 2 months ago. Nothing had happened, and it means that the government now will incur additional costs to repair his car as well as to have that road that was dug up by the Water Authority dealt with. Dunscombe is a massive area, heavy traffic, and I've been trying for the last 3 months to be able to get 3 cans in the middle of the road. Are we going to wait until somebody dies? So I want to find out what synergies there are with government and the utility companies to be able to make sure that as long as a project is completed, the government is made aware, because I expect that the private utility companies will pay for whatever they have done to impact on the road and its conditions. I would like to have that idea. And my final question, ma'am, and I know the interest of time is really very important, is associated with learner drivers and of course their trainers, and what is happening particularly with what we call jam busting, excuse me, when every day, as long as you get to the junction by the roundabout to Simpson Motors, near to Saul, people take that hard left lane that shall take them down to, what's the hill called? To take you to the traffic lights of the university, Heinz Hill. And then they make that curve to go to Redmond's Village. And there are accidents waiting to happen there. I would want to find out what plans the government has, I mean in the Ministry of Public Works, to be able to put some formal training programs and some announcements in the radio, and so giving diagrams and all that. With the technology we have, we can do it so that learners know what to expect, and the older folks like me who may not be so familiar, that to do it every day, get an understanding, because it is really going to lead to the loss of life and limb and so on. And of course, people are not paying attention to flashing lights. People are coming through red lights. And there's so many things that are happening. I believe that a public education project should be in the making, and I believe with the Honorable Minister and his youthfulness and usefulness that he will be able to give us some word on it, because every minute we're seeing serious accidents that really should not happen if people are driving defensively and not offensively, as we see every day.
Thank you,
and I would just put
Honourable
that in a nutshell. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Just to let you know as well, that Shop Hill is also included in the CAF program road list. In respect of the utilities, the Barbados Water Authority is now under one ministry, and that's our ministry. They're very much part of this ministry, and we have had discussions with respect to the reinstatement of roads. We have agreed a policy. Under my watch, we agreed a policy, and we are going to ensure that that policy is executed. And they're all here listening to you, Honourable Member for St. Thomas, and I'm sure that they will get that Dunscombe Road sorted, and I've made a note myself to ensure that that road is is reinstated in the shortest possible time. We also have a challenge, even though you didn't mention it, with this concrete ready mix spilling on the roadways of Barbados. Last year I met with the suppliers of ready mix concrete, and I had a discussion with them. They had agreed that if there was a spillage that they would then clean it up. That has not happened. I intend to meet with them within the next 2 weeks to remind them of our discussions, and feeling that we will have to address some issues. You may be aware that we are also undertaking a major revision to our Road Traffic Act. We are planning to have a new road traffic bill, and we intend to address that along with other matters of safety and so on in respect of road traffic obligations. So in respect of the learner drivers and other drivers on the road, what we are going to do to address that matter is to ensure that we have the PSA, the public service announcements, done in respect of road safety. And in fact, only this week, last Monday's management meeting, we had a discussion in respect of road safety, and we are going to pilot some new PSAs in respect of road safety.
Thank you. Minister, please give your wrap-up and ask that the head be moved.
All right. Well, thank you, Madam Chair. I would also like to take this opportunity to thank officials of the Ministry of Transport, Works and Water Resources for providing members of Parliament with answers and explanations. I found the session to be very useful. This is obviously my first estimates, leading an estimates debate on behalf of a ministry. I want to tell members that we've listened to you and listened to the concerns of your constituents. We are aware that there are multiple requests that come from you as members, and your requests come in the name of the constituents who you represent. And I want to assure you that the Ministry of Transport, Works and Water Resources will be working around the clock to ensure that we address as many concerns. We won't be able to solve all the concerns in one financial year, but we're going to make good, steady progress because we have to do what we have to do. Like I said earlier, this country has suffered an infrastructural imbalance, and as a result of that, it falls to this government now to have to pick up the reins and have to move with alacrity with an aggressive public works, public sector investment program to ensure that we do what is right for this country to maintain the quality of our infrastructure. Water, roads, and drainage, those are the priorities of the ministry, and we will ensure that we do what we have to do. Execution, therefore, becomes the top priority for the ministry, and I want to assure all that we will be working around the clock to execute on behalf of the people of Barbados. And with those remarks, I want to thank you, Madam Chair. I therefore beg that Head 81 stand par.
Question is that Head 81 in the amount of $110,164,376 stand par. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. All those against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that you do not report his under the Speaker progress and beg leave to sit again.
Question is that I do not report his honor the Speaker progress. I'm asked for leave to sit again. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. All those against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
The Chairman has reported progress and requested leave to sit again. Honorable Leader, Government Business.
Mr. Speaker, at this juncture, we ask that the sitting be suspended until Friday morning at 10, at which time we will do the head for the Ministry of Health, possibly one other, but for the moment, the Ministry of Health, and then we will end this particular set of debates. So I beg to move that this House do now be suspended until Friday, 19th of March, 10 a.m.
The question is that this Honorable Chairman will be suspended until Friday, the 19th day of March at 10 a.m. in the forenoon. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Meeting the ayes have it. This Honorable Chamber stands suspended until Friday, the 19th day of March at 10 a.m. in the forenoon.